Okay, so what we're trying to get to here is I'm hoping today we refine this ideas, and then I want to get into moving towards final drawing. And I probably said this too, but this I think is really important. One of the things in this class and my illustration class in particular is I'm trying to, and I think people will probably start noticing this very quickly, is the idea of a final drawing and how many people don't know how to do a final drawing. Does that make sense? Because in a lot of classes, what I consider to be very stiff, unacceptable drawings are acceptable. Okay. When you're going to paint something, you have to put the time into the drawing and it has to be completely designed. Okay. You're especially with watercolor, because watercolor, you are not going to find everything in the paint because it's not an opaque medium. When it's opaque, I can find certain things in the paint. Okay. And there's certain little things I can do in watercolor too. But watercolor for sure, but any illustration, I want to have it really locked down from a design perspective. Does that make sense? Because, and you probably are already seeing this. It's like, it's tricky to take your loose drawings, that you're going, okay, it's all there, to a more refined drawing. It's actually a tricky transition. Does that make sense? And I'm really hammering it in this class and in illustration, okay? Because we're trying to make finished pictures in here, okay? And those have to be pretty refined, okay? Refined just from a design perspective, okay? We don't want to get stiff. That's the trick. Is we don't want to get stiff, but we want to have a finished thing that we can work with. Does that make sense? You can't leave things like somebody just did this where the hand was like completely just sort of thrown in. It's like, okay, it looks fine for a sketch. How are you going to paint that? You know what I mean? You can't paint it because it's not worked out. You're going to get into the paint and it's going to become a big blob because you don't know where to sort of structure that hand or anything because it's just half-ass. It's like, no, now you got to go in there and dip that thumb out and that pad around the thumb to really show that it's a thumb and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not talking about a bunch of anatomy stuff. I'm really talking about draftsmanship and design, right? Or draftsmanship in service to design, because that's what this is, okay? That's what all this is. Okay, this one was, okay, so what's this here? What is that right there?
It's kind of like a campfire type.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's mostly set at, like, the setting is at night, so I just put that to give like some light.
I love night stuff. And what I would do, by the way, if I was going to do this as a night scene, and we'll get into this a little more later, but I'd probably dampen the paper and then kind of tamp it off so it's just damp. And then I'd set up this flame, and then in like around this flame, it'd be a little warmer, and then I'd transition it into the cooler. And then I'd flood this here with the warm light reflecting off this, and then flood this with the bluish moonlight stuff, or just the bluish value or color. And then that way they'll commingle very, very naturally, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I go later and probably either with, and I'll show you all this stuff, either with gouache or whatever, and I'd start putting like back lit moonlight on it and really push the warm cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because last week we talked about actually using the washes, to kind of create things, right?
Yeah.
This is an example of that. My brain goes right to, I'm going to knock this in wet into wet, and then I'll start building, and it's a lot of this watercolor stuff, in my opinion, is just about when to use what wash. Okay. And sort of building everything up nice and loose and then tightening, just like a drawing. Okay.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say, we said this is 11 by 17, right?
Yeah.
Did I say it has to be horizontal? I don't think I did, right? Yeah. In this class, I'm not going to care.
I think it was one thing because we talked about where they meet.
Oh, the gutter. That's right. Okay, so let's leave it at that. Hang on. I think. What's happening here?
I guess they're kind of like just looking at each other while laying on the ground.
I think it's this one right here.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, yeah, maybe. Yeah, that could work.
Now, if you want to incorporate like this, I mean, you could come in here. Maybe silhouette that castle way back here. Oops. Way back. Yeah. Back here. You know, maybe it's up on a hill and just have it silhouette back there along with the mountains. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you want that in there.
Yeah,
I probably would.
I can try that.
Huh?
I can try that.
I just like it because it gives it a, you know, a really strong silhouette back there. Is this also night?
I guess it was sort of like daytime, but maybe I can make it night.
That's up to you.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, if you want to do it night, one thing you could do is have, because that's a kid, right?
Yeah.
One thing you could do is maybe have the kid holding up a lantern, and that's doing the same effect as the fire.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it feels a little more story-ish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's that one. Start refining that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Might see if there's anything. Go here in the foreground, maybe. Maybe just one element there, and I don't know what it is, but just something may be there. At least play with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll do
A lot of times I just start making random shapes, and then I just go, I need something here, and I just start making random shapes, and eventually something comes to me, and I go, oh, okay, I'll make that something that relates to the story, obviously. And if I don't have a story, I just make it up.
Mm.
Any questions?
No, I think you got it all.
Okay.
Except for me, at least, as to what I'm supposed to do.
Okay, good. Where's Elizabeth?
Right here.
Okay, what do you think?
I think that how you were saying earlier about like being interested in your work.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was at first, and then I got overwhelmed with perspective.
That's exactly what I was just talking about.
Yeah, so like now it doesn't look fun to me.
Okay,
my sketches looked fun.
Let's do something real quick, okay? This isn't a perspective class, but this to me isn't about perspective. This is about exactly what I'm trying to identify here in the beginning, which is taking these core things and learning how to transition them into actual working knowledge. Does that make sense? It's something that I'm going through all this philosophy stuff, but I think it's important that you know my point of view, because I don't want you to think, oh, he's just some hard ass. He's always, it's like, it's not. It's actually based on how I learned, and then based on all this experience I had in the industry, okay? And the one thing that I really noticed when I was in school, and I still see it in every single school, it's like, here's how we teach basic drawing. It's like, that doesn't work. Like, you need to stop doing that, teaching it like that. But you can't do that because you have no perspective as a teacher, because this is just what you do. You know what I mean? Oh, when you draw a head, you know, the system, it's like, that's why your head drawings look like shit, because you don't have any point of view as an artist. So the idea of that, and then guys like Gary gave me both. I mean, the guy was a master at perspective, but then he made cool stuff out of it, right? And how to transition. Everything has a transition. Everything we're talking about in here, I'm trying to make it real world valuable. Does that make sense? It has to have real world value. It has to go from here to here. Otherwise, it's useless. Okay. Anyway, so let's look at this real quick. Let me see if I can find this.
And I had a hard time with trying to figure out what to put on the left side. So.
We'll figure that out in a minute. But let's just look at this real quick.
But you saw my original sketches, and I thought they were a lot more fun than this.
No, what you just said is so common. Okay. Oh, now I'm going to, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Now I'm going to the final drawing. Now I'm starting to squeeze the fun out of it.
Yeah. Okay. And I have to spend a weekend with my in-laws.
I get rid of family. Get rid of family, friends. You don't need that stuff. I don't anyway. Yes, that's exactly what happens. Okay, that's actually a really good thing to identify. Is exactly that. When you start going to, and that's what I was just talking about, where you have to develop a process, and you're in the learning process of the process, whatever that means. But so it's a little tricky because you're getting your hands around it, you know, so you're struggling a little bit, just like everybody does, with that sort of fluidity and looseness. But I've developed my process where I like all of the process. You know what I mean? I love doing the thumbnails. I love doing the refinement. I love transferring it. I love stretching the paper. And then I love starting the washes and all that. I love all of it. But I developed my process around that. I like every part of the process. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And I like drawing. So when I'm doing this kind of thing, I like a little bit of the drawing in there. I don't want it where it feels like a coloring book, but I like some of that drawing weaving in and out of the color and all that stuff. I just like that, you know? Now you might want to do it completely tonally, and that's totally fine too. It ends up looking pretty tonal because most of the line gets lost. And then I'll reinforce it a little bit later and I'll show you guys how to do that. But let's look at this real quick. Where's my control bar? Here it is. So let's say, okay, so let's say, this is so annoying. Okay. Let's say that we've already gone in here and we're starting. And okay, so the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to go in here. Let's get rid of this. Oops. Why is that doing that? I haven't been in this program in a while. Okay, that's super annoying. Hang on. Oh, that's why. Okay, so in my thumbnailing process, let's say, in my exploration of my design and my idea and all that, I've gone in here and I've gone, and I just usually tend to go to this Tudor style just because it's in my head right now. You know, and I go, okay, I'm going to do this Tudor style thing, and I've done all these thumbnails, and I've got it kind of like this and this, you know, on a rope and hanging there, and I've just done all these loose sketches. And I go, you know, I'm going to use a lot of verticality in my ideas. I'm going to really push these big shapes. Maybe I'm going to really overlap these here. And I sort of have my idea of what my styling looks like a little bit, correct?
Yes.
You know, so let's just say something like that. And now I go in and I go, I'm going to do a 2-point perspective. So I'm going to pull my vanishing points out here. Now I tend to freehand this stuff. I don't expect you to do that this early on, but I can pretty much see perspective and move it around and everything. But that's just because I sketch all the time. Okay. When you're first learning it, I don't expect you to do that. And then sometimes with picture books, sometimes, you know, if you look at Mary Blair and people like that, she completely screws with the perspective. Okay. Like there was this really cool Mary Blair at this show just recently at the Fullerton Museum, a bunch of original Mary Blairs, by the way, which was awesome. I think she had a character in the kitchen cooking, and there was a table in the foreground, and she flipped it completely like this. Right. And then one of my students goes, I love that kind of stuff, but I have a teacher that told me that's wrong because it's out of perspective. That is so like insane to me that somebody would say that. And it's like, it's not out of perspective. That's a stylistic choice. Trust me, Mary Blair knew all about perspective. You know what I mean? These are stylistic choices. Okay. Or that bear book. I think I've showed you guys that. There's really no perspective in that book. He does the same thing where he flips the table completely like this or totally flat, but it's cool looking. It's designed. You know what I mean? It's not because he doesn't know perspective. Does that make sense? So some of these things are stylistic choices. You just got to make sure people know they're a stylistic choice. Does that make sense? Because then you get people on the other side of this equation, and I've had this over and over again. I probably said it, where I go, that drawing's not strong. And they go, oh, that's my style. And it's like, that ain't style. That's crappy drawing. Okay. Stop telling me that style. What you're trying to jump to is something like the Clayton brothers or somebody like that who work in a sort of outsider primitive art style, but it's totally cool. And there's a reason why the Clayton brothers are in the New Yorker and you're not. Okay. Because that's considered very sophisticated. And what you're trying to do is jump the line and go, I don't want to learn good drawing. I don't want to learn perspective. That's my style. That's a totally different thing. Does that make sense? Intent Okay. So let's just do a quick, a lot of times what I do is I'll just put a quick grid here. And again, I haven't been in this program in a while, so I'm probably clunky with it. And I'm not precise. So what am I doing here? Anybody?
You're establishing kind of the foundation for the drawing.
I'm establishing the ground plane. Okay. And then I go, I'll do this real quick. And then I go, okay, so then you're going to go into your like, okay, so maybe I'm doing actually, let me do that one more time because I want to make it a higher vantage point. So then I'm going to establish that I want a vantage point, a high vantage point. So I'm going to move all this up a little bit. Then I'm going to come back here and do the same thing. I feel like these need to be further out. So now I just screwed up my whole thing. Hang on. That's good enough. And I'm just going to establish that there's my ground plane. And then I'm going to go in here. Okay, so I'll use things like this. If I'm doing things real quick, it's great, you know, to have this perspective tool and all that. But what I do is, and I could make this 3-point. I'm not going to do that just for the sake of whatever. You know, maybe there's something here. And I just start kind of going, what's here? And then I'm going to put another one here. Maybe this is something tall. So I don't even really know what I'm doing yet, but I know kind of in my mind, you know, these stylistic choices I'm probably going to make. I know my style, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So maybe it's like, I don't know, like a little village and the stuff back here. And I'll flesh that out later, but it's going to really fade off. But then I turn this off. Why is that not going off? That's weird. Oh, that's why. Okay. And then I come in here and go, okay, now I'm going to apply some of that styling on top of this freehand. And like here, I might turn it back on and make sure that roof line lines up. And I start applying this more or less freehand because again, it's just another process of refinement. So I'm going to lay out my big idea here. Then I might curve this in a little bit, might pull this out a little bit. And I start just designing very quickly. I'll put a little shop down here with an awning and an opening. And maybe there's a sidewalk here. And maybe this becomes a fountain. And I'll flesh that out later. And then this has windows above it where the shop owners live. Maybe over here. And by the way, this stuff that I'm pulling out of this building is stuff that I've drawn over at Old Town Orange. Like certain building or certain window ideas and stuff like that, okay? Which will kind of work here. Because I'm not making a documentary here. Like this stuff might originally be based on, I'm gonna put these little awnings on the windows. And then I'm gonna chunk up this ledge on here. Break this silhouette over here. Oops. Pull a little fold there. Maybe there's something here on the side of the building. I don't know what yet. And I start fleshing out. I'll put some edges on this. And I start fleshing that out over that simple boxy thing. I start applying my freehand styling to it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that make sense, you guys? I mean, I could knock out this village probably in a half an hour. The bones of it. You know what I mean? And then I take a break. Then I come back to it and look at it and I adjust and play and screw around. And I have this loose drawing over my, on a layer over my perspective drawing. So if I'm doing this on paper, which is usually how I'm doing it. I've got a drawing board. I tape down my, if I have a perspective drawing, I tape it down. And then I put a piece of trace over it and I start doing the same thing I just did. Okay. And just refining it. And it's all messy and screwy and loose. And I don't care. Because, and by the way, the reason I'm so messy and loose and all that stuff at the beginning is I don't want to get tight too fast, or otherwise the whole drawing falls apart and it all gets really stiff. Does that make sense? And like this thing here, maybe that's some kind of, I always end up doing this one. Maybe this, following the same idea. And I'll double check my perspective later. I'm not that worried about it right now. You know, maybe this is a clock tower. Maybe there's a ledge out here. And, you know, eventually I'll start breaking up the building shapes into different variations. But right now I'm just trying to throw stuff down. Maybe there's a tree here. So I get some foliage in here. Maybe there's one out here. And I just indicate them like that. I don't go any further than that for now. These two shapes right off the bat are too close together. They're the same size, they're the same height, they're almost the same shape. I don't want that. Does that make sense? See how they're repeating those two trees? So, you know, maybe this one comes out and maybe this is a different kind of tree here. Maybe some more vertical, maybe it's a, I don't know, some other kind of tree maybe, you know, and then I go, maybe I can put some foliage here. Why? Because I don't want I want to transition the building into the ground. I don't want it to look like a box sitting on a sidewalk. That's not how buildings look. They transition into the ground. Does that make sense? So it could be, and then here I could have maybe a little fruit stand here. That's what this is a little fruit stand. Yeah, maybe I could put some of those quaint, what do you call them? Lamps. That way I can overlap it in front of my building. There's too many lamps, but that's okay. You know, and then this over here becomes something, I don't know what. You know, and then I'm going to try and break up my shapes of my buildings a little more. Not going to use this idea over and over again. I'm going to now transition. I'd probably have 3 or 4 building ideas I could pull off of and then just start morphing them, right? And then maybe this is a, you know, a square. So I put that, again, that's pulling out of my head out of Old Town Orange because they have a fountain like that right in the center of Old Town Orange. You know, and then how does that transition? Is this a modern village, but just looks old? Like I was just reading on Robert Crumb, he moved to Sauve, France, which is some little obscure medieval town. It looks totally medieval, but I mean, and it's weird. There's just a lot of eccentrics and artists and stuff that live there, but it's like going to live back, you know, 400 years ago. You know what I mean? So it could be a town like that where there could be modern vehicles in it. That town I think is too small. The roads are too narrow to even have vehicles. But you know, where is this? What's my story? What is it? And if I'm just drawing it, if I'm just drawing, I tend to be making up a narrative all the time anyway, because it's a design technique for me. Okay. I go, I need an idea to hang this drawing on. Does that make sense? And a lot of times it's happening in real time while I'm drawing. All of a sudden the logic starts unfolding in front of me and I go, oh, okay, that's a butcher right there. Okay, then if I have a butcher, then right next to that, maybe there's a place where I buy butter and cheese. And then, you know, oh, okay, now this is a little shopping area. And now, you know, and what I'm describing, by the way, is my perfect life, where I walk home, pick up some cheese, go to the butcher, pick up my dinner, go home, cook in some little village, you know. You know, and then I could put something, and then I go, okay, I need something here in the foreground. So maybe I have a building, I don't know, coming right into the frame here. And I just see the rooftop. And then maybe, and by the way, that video I put up on the beginning of the semester, one drawing Paris on that whiteboard, it's this. More or less, right? It's just starting with a bunch of boxes and stuff and then just doing this. That's it, right? Okay, and then I got this. So now I can go, okay, I'm going to put one of those little, maybe it's a church. I don't know. I want to put this here. And that what I do again, now I got a big foreground element, right? It's not the star because I don't want it to be the star. And then I'm going to go here, and this is going to follow the roof line. I'm going to go here. Then I'm going to add the little shingles on the edge here. I'm going to start adding shingles. Are these going to be those really overlapping, irregular shaped shingles, which I like the idea of? So I might kind of add a few of those. I'm not going to add all of them. And then maybe this is stone, this thing. So I start going in and just indicating that. And then the key here, when I start going to a final drawing, is when I go to these stones and things, I want to make sure, like, okay, so what people do, in my opinion, when they make a mistake here, let's put a cap on this. Now I've got a cap on it. And then I'm going to turn off my perspective. When I'm going to finish this, I got to make sure that some of these stones break the edge. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then I'm going to make sure that I light these things just like I would anything. And then I'm going to give them a little bit of texture. I'd probably do that in the watercolor. Break this edge. Maybe some of them are slightly different value. And how I would paint that in watercolor, again, I'd flood that area with a little bit of water, dampen it up. And then I'd flood all my variations of stone color in there. Then I go in, refine, and separate the stones, okay? The mistake people make is they go in and try and paint each stone, and then the whole thing disconnects, okay? So what we're trying to do from a construction standpoint is connect everything with a big idea first. Does that make sense? In this case, a big wash. Or like the video I'll put up for you guys about the landscape stuff, because I was just making that up. But I go, okay, I have water here, and then, so that's the big idea. Just put one big value down, okay? And then pull the reflections and things out of it, and then put a reflection over that, and then start building into it a little bit. But it starts with the big idea. It does. If you try and paint water reflections and things like that, like one little shape at a time, it'll totally disconnect. It won't look like a reflection. Does that make sense? So does that make sense how we paint that stone? And I'll do some demos on it, okay? And I'll do them in real time when we start getting to that. Okay, that's why I'm trying to get a second setup here, because I don't want to always just do a formal talk about it on YouTube or whatever. I want to also have conversational demos in here. That's really important to me, okay? Which is, again, why I set up a second camera, because hopefully they'll just stand alone on themselves and I don't have to redo them again. Okay, so anyway, it made sense why I say you got to break that edge with the stone, right? Okay, and then, well, now I got a chimney. Okay, and then I don't know if there was enough room, and there probably isn't here. Then I could go, okay, I'm gonna, because I'm just trying to break up shapes where they're interesting. You know, if there was enough room, I might put one of those little rooftop window things, which is really not. I wouldn't cram that in there. Or if this was a steeple, you know, I could keep going up and making it a steeple and maybe have one of those weather vanes up there, whatever, right? But now we have a foreground element, correct? Yeah? You know, and then I just keep building this. I just go, okay, well, maybe here, there's a corner. That means there's probably a corner over here. Okay, then I come in here and I loosen that corner up. Maybe put cracks. Maybe it's got a sidewalky kind of thing. Maybe it's got, you know, a lamp here. And I'd be pulling the lamp, turn on my thing, go, if there's lamps over here, if I pull it over here, that's how tall it is. So that's where it is. And then again, maybe I'll put some kind of building here on the corner, maybe one here. Or actually, I want this corner open a little bit, so I'll just leave that open. And then I just come in here and start populating this thing and going, okay, so the road goes through here maybe. Maybe there'd be another corner here probably. Maybe one over here. And I'm just trying to map it out where it starts to look, you know, like a fleshed out idea. Does that make sense? And then again, all I'm using perspective for is to place things, and I know they're in perspective. Once I do that, then I've got a guide under there, whether it's on paper or here, where I can just start going in and drawing over this and adding some foliage and trying to figure out smaller, like I might put a little cart here and add a horse pulling the cart, you know, just stuff like that. And if I'm going to draw the horse, I'm going to draw that super loose initially. And part of the reason I'm drawing so loose in this early stage is I don't know how much of this stuff is going to survive. You know what I mean? Like what the mistake people make is they go, hey, I'm going to throw a horse and cart there. And then they spend the next 2 days drawing a horse in a cart. And then you get to the end of it and you go, that doesn't work. And they don't want to get rid of it now because they're so invested in it. You know what I mean? Which is a real problem. So I just throw it down and then keep looking at it, and I might move it. It gives me a lot of freedom in this part of the process of designing because I'm not committed to anything. Okay. Because I haven't put that much time into anything. Okay. And then, you know, that way, and then we become, and this is another reason why you got to sketch all the time. You learn that everything's not a precious thing. Does that make sense? That you go, that's a bad idea. I don't give a damn that you spent 2 days on it. That's your fault. You shouldn't have done that. But they don't want to let go of it now. And then what they do is spend the next 2 days trying to fix it. And you go, you can't fix it. It doesn't work. Like, just get rid of it. Put the horse over here. Oh God, then the horse is in another perspective. You shouldn't have drawn it. You know, you shouldn't have spent that much time on it. You got to sit on these things and marinate in them and come back to them and go, what's working and what? I mean, I've never made a drawing that I haven't come back to a week later, 6 months later, and gone, oh God, I should have changed that. I should have done that. I should have done that. That's just time. That's just perspective. Does that make sense? Okay, so this idea makes sense of how we go loose over something rigid, right? And the thing underneath that's rigid is nothing but the bones. That's it. Okay. That makes sense, right? Okay. And I know I sidetrack here, but I think this is all related. Am I wrong? I mean, I think it's related because I want you guys, I love that so many people are taking that perspective class. I think that's awesome because most students, I don't think Phil started doing that long ago. And I remember I go, that's going to be like pulling teeth to get anybody to take that class. And it's been really successful. And I think that's really a valuable class. Okay. Because I don't think you can get a class like that unless you go to like Art Center or something. Most people really don't know jack about perspective. Okay. You know, and that idea, because I've had a couple students that go, oh man, we're doing like 5 point. I'm never going to use that. And it's like, it's not about that you're going to use that specific thing. It's about that he's actually teaching you how to think through perspective problems that you're going to encounter. And then it's floating around back there and you'll kind of go, oh, that's sort of like this. And you'll know how to do it. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to retain every inch of that knowledge, but it's there and it starts to help you to logic through things. Okay. I used to get stuff thrown at me at Imagineering all the time that was like, I don't know how to figure this out. And I'd have to figure it out. You know what I mean? With a gun in my head, terrified, by the way. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this now. Okay, so this guy, I think, needs to be more important. Let's do this. Hang on. Let's make another layer. Let's go. And by the way, I use every technique in the book. So if I have a drawing, a lot of times I'll tear it up like this. I'll take a cell phone picture of it. I'll pull it into Photoshop. I'll kind of straighten it out a little bit, and then I'll just tear it apart. I might tilt the head. I might move an arm. And yeah, it's not going to be a good drawing or anything, but it's like, oh, that does work. And that works. Everything I'm doing is trying to be super loose in this phase and use every technique I can find to just get big ideas down. Because it's the same thing as the shapes. It's big to small, right? So that little tilt, we were just talking about this in perspective class. Somebody drew something. I tore the head off it and I tilted the head up and he goes, God, that makes a huge difference. I go, I know, but it's so simple to go in and do these things, to move things around. I do it all the time. If I have a drawing that I think is starting to head towards finish, I'll start tilting the head or something like that. Just little subtle things to go, is that give it a little more personality? Does that speak to the emotion a little better? All that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? That's where the art part of it comes in. I think this guy, and I think he could come more into frame here. And then, you know, maybe there is a house here. Okay, so then this one, oh, that's way better. I moved my drawing tablet. Okay, so yeah, maybe this is here. Maybe this is, where is this?
It's a house in San Dimas.
Okay, but where is it metaphorically or whatever, conceptually?
I don't know what you mean. I'm sorry.
In your mind, is this a rural village? Is it farmland?
No, it's a neighborhood.
So it's
It's
just
a neighborhood, but it's the one big property in a neighborhood. But it's up above.
But is this like,
It's higher than the other properties around.
but is it like a farm? I don't mean in reality. I mean in conceptually.
Oh, well, no, it's just a family home. It's a family lives there. A family of 7 kids lives there.
And is it in modern times?
Yes.
Okay, so then what I would do then is I would go to that. This is the best thing to do. I would go to, so you, this basis on something in your neighborhood, right?
It's my mother-in-law's house.
Okay, so I just go there and I draw this from life.
Yeah, I went
start-
yesterday and I tried to draw from life, and then I took some photos, and then I saw a white-tailed hawk. It was huge. It was really cool. But I'm just struggling with it now.
What I think you got to do first is find sort of a stylistic point of view, which is, you know, how am I going to push this? Am I going to chub it up and make it younger? And by the way, when you're doing windows, put a couple of guides here. Then you can just go boom, 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 and they'll line up, right? Pull this out. And then like, okay, so one thing I'd say is make bigger statements. So like if this, I'm just going to make this up because it's easier if I just kind of make it up. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So like if this, like this port, like I don't care what's there. Okay. Anything I use for, especially for something like this, I don't care what's there. Okay. It's my starting point. So a lot of times I'll have this discussion with students and they go, well, the porch didn't have a pillar like that. And I go, I know. But this looks better. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I want to give it some character. So maybe this has those big kind of craftsman style things. And again, maybe I can do a stone thing here, or I could put a railing here and I could put a stairwell here. And then maybe I could put a path here that leads out to this brick fence. Maybe I could break this off with a chimney or whatever, or this might be, yeah, chimney would be fine. Pull the roof lines out a little bit, maybe make the, whatever you call them, the shingles a little more stylized. This up here could be brick or stone or whatever you want. Could even have that if I want.
And I think what happened was when I just sketched it out from my head, it looked better than when I went to the house. I'm like, oh, it's pretty plain. There's not a lot of,
that's where you got to pull. Okay, so then my
Yeah.
question would be, why use that house?
because it's a story that I wrote.
Okay.
So I wanted it to be
You
that.
got to go in. Look, one thing that's really interesting to do, and this is kind of an example of this, is to take something. Hang on. I always forget it's Friday today. It feels like Saturday to me. is to take something sort of mundane. I mean, they do it all the time in all sorts of things, and make it much more fantastic. Okay. Now that could just be, and you know, this stuff I'll do all of this I do with just thumbnails, and I'll just look at it and go, what can I push here? Can I go, can I make it, you know, I have a tendency to curve the roof lines. You know, am I taking this idea and am I chubbing it up a little bit and shortening it, flaring it a little bit? And I'm going to do just a bunch of these little sketches and go, okay, the porch goes back a little bit. So that means I can have a little bottom right here, and maybe there's some plants in here, and my door is in there. And then whatever the roof does here. And maybe there's, I don't know, another building off of it here. And again, I'm just working off basic, simple shapes. Maybe this is the garage. Not worried about my drawing. I'm worried about any of that stuff. And then what's on the roof? Or maybe the roof has those things like I talked about earlier. Maybe it's got these little windows up here. And something up here, whatever that is. And some trim. And again, here's my path. And then maybe now I want a big organic here. So this is where I'll put a tree. Does that make sense? What's that noise?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm working it all out here, right? In 5-minute drawing. But what I'm looking at is like, what's there that I can exaggerate? This is for kids. So I'm probably going to go with that kind of kid philosophy of the friendlier shapes, softer shapes a little bit, probably not a lot of pointy stuff. I was just talking this about in my class to the kids. Like I just watched Klaus recently, and Klaus has got all this, whatever you call it, buzz around it, which it's deserving of. But when I looked a lot, and then people were talking about the shading technique they used, and and I watched it. And I liked the movie. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but that shading technique sucked. It made everything airbrushy and soft, and I can't stand that look. It reminds me of 70s van paintings. Okay. And then there was a lot of disconnect with the design. There was a certain design that was very angular and very pointy and very sort of Tim Burton-y, and then a whole other design language that felt like it was from a different film. And then there was a lot of design choices in that I just don't think made sense. Okay. But they're not looking at it that way. They're getting overwhelmed by the buzz around and everything. It's like, well, look at it from a design perspective. Okay. It's not really a coherently designed movie. Does that make sense?
Yes.
At least to my opinion. Okay. And by the way, I'm probably wrong because everybody likes that movie. So whatever. Okay. Okay. So now I got an organic in here. And then maybe this is a cobblestone pavement or whatever you call it, pathway. It's going to get bigger as they come out here. And then again, I can, maybe over here, there's a picket fence. And all this stuff I'm going, what am I trying to convey here? Is this a friendly place? Is it a scary place? White picket fence or whatever reminds me of, and then maybe there's another something back here. Maybe there's a farm back here or a, whatever you call that. A barn back here or something. I don't know. Then if I do that, I got an excuse to do a bunch of other things. And maybe there's just a row of foliage back here, maybe. And whatever's off in the distance, maybe some buildings silhouetted back here or houses or something. And that's all the time I spend on it. Okay. And then I go, okay, well, maybe all this goes, I feel like I should turn it around. So let's flip it. Now it's going to fall apart. Watch. It's all right. So let's go here. Maybe shove this over a little bit. Maybe make this a little bigger. And then maybe I go over here, and then what happened? I got to pull this over. And I start to put my rooster, my rooster in here. And now he feels like he needs to move more into frame because he's important, right?
Yes.
And then I go, okay, can I, what's he sitting on? Again, is it a stone thing? Break this top up a little bit. Could be, brick, could be whatever you want. And that's one idea. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then if I'm doing it doesn't matter if I'm doing digitally or traditionally, because I do it the same way both ways. This is going to be on I'm going to have pieces of trace going over. I don't mind doing this kind of stuff. I've actually just like working in pencil for this kind of thing. That's just me. I don't mind kind of working things out digitally. That's your choice. But the handling of tools and everything, this feels very much more limited in that way than a pencil does. A pencil, you can drag it, twist it, use a side, shove it up and down, serrate edge it. You just do all this stuff with it, get big chiseled marks with it, pull things back out of it. It just feels very organic to me. I draw differently when I'm doing that. But this can give me just big compositional ideas. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But he needs to be important. What kind of beak do they have? Is it like that? I get them. I might push this chest out a little bit, get them a little more puffed up. And then maybe the other side of the fence is over here. Probably too far over. Probably need it here more. And then do I go any further and go, there's a gate here? Maybe because he's guarding it, maybe I put a big keep out sign, beware of rooster, whatever, right? And again, that's one idea. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And now I got a really strong and then maybe here, I don't know if I need it here, and I don't even know if I need it, but maybe there's, then I kind of go to like, is this is it a neglected house? Then I could put some kind of weeds and things coming up here to sort of say that. On and on and on, right? And then if I like all that, then I'll take this and I'll start to flesh it out. I'll take this, whether it's on paper or this. And by throwing paper over it, it's automatically going to reduce its opacity. Then I can just do that. And then let's say this is the one that I'm starting to like. My next stage is going to be, okay, now I've got to really actually flesh out this bird. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to get a fatter brush. I'm going to come over here and start to, oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Make a new layer. And I'm going to start to pick things out of here that I might like. And and then I'm trying to figure out little stylistic things I can do. One thing that's funny to me about chickens is they always have that completely like they just look so silly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like their eyes. I just saw a drawing of a chicken like yesterday, some comical drawing of it or whatever. And they captured that thing where their eyes look completely like there's nothing going on in there, I'm sure there is, but and then how do I break up this edge? And I'd look at a little bit of chicken reference, but only so much, because I don't want to, ideally, I always want to go, it's way too bulbous. Ideally, I just want to go I go to my sister's house. She's got chickens and I just draw chickens. And first I'm drawing them straight and then I'm pushing. Once I'm comfortable with the shape language, then I'm pushing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so what other questions? Does that help at all?
Yeah, that helps a lot. I just didn't want to, I didn't want to add too much stuff, you know.
No, you don't. You know, and I might do 5 or 6. I mean, who knows how many of these I might do. I might do a whole bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
But until I finally get somewhere where I'm going, okay, this kind of works, you know. And then flip it back and forth, whether it's on paper or here, flip it back and forth, or look at it in the mirror. Because that's why I said when I flip this, I go, watch, the drawing's going to fall apart. Because a lot of times it does. You flip it and you go, oh my God, it's so off. But then I correct it backwards, right? And then I go back the other way. And when I'm doing that, going back and forth and correcting backwards and forwards, it's going to be a balanced drawing. Because once I look at it backwards for a while and I work over it, now my brain's using to seeing it that way. Then I flip it back the other way and I go, oh, wait, now that's not working. And I'm flipping it back and forth and trying to get everything balanced. Does that make sense? A lot of these things with these designs, it's all about balance. It really is. A lot of it's about balance. In design. Okay, so you know what you're doing moving forward then, right?
Yes.
And you don't have any other questions? And by the way, I'm not trying to force you guys to ask me questions. I just want to make sure that I'm answering everything.
No, like it's fun when I'm sketching, you know, but then when I have to think about shading and lighting, and then I get like overwhelmed, you know?
Yeah. Okay, again, when you guys talk about this stuff, it's always the same 5 things. Okay, that's one of them. Hang on. What you just described is exactly, I think, one of the biggest struggles in here we have to get past, which is this. What you just said is like, same thing with me, man. When I'm just sketching, I'm having a blast. And then I go, okay, now I got to push this into a more refined drawing. And there's always a little struggle there where you're like, yeah, it just doesn't work. That's not strong. Now when I'm trying to clean it up a little bit. But again, I developed a process around that problem, because I'm always trying to develop a process to solve my problems, if that makes any sense. Okay. So then I just developed this very refining technique where I'm actually kind of keeping it loose all through all the different parts of the process as I'm refining it. So I never feel like I'm doing that stiff drawing that everybody does. And that's what I'm trying to get through to everybody is a refined drawing does not mean like an animation cleanup drawing. That's not what it means. That's a very deadline drawing. Those drawings are beautiful drawings, but they're deadline. And the reason they're deadline is because they're going to fill those with color and stuff. And it's really just containing the information of the character or whatever. Okay. It's a different end result. What we're trying to get here is like beautiful line quality and all those kind of things that it's used to be hard to do in 2D animation and that kind of thing. Okay. Does that make sense? So the process of going from, rough to finished, it's a tricky transition, and what you just said is like, oh, I love it when I'm doing the sketching part. I'm the same way. But I kind of look at things now. For some reason, I love taking something really loose. And it's one of the reasons I love working over student drawings, because you just give me something to work over and I can usually pull something out of it. Okay. Because I just go in and start refining shapes and then refining that idea. But I'm always working super loose. If I light table one of these drawings, I'm still working way in the back of the pencil and I'm just thinking like I'm doing another drawing. If the thing that kills people when they light table stuff is they go in and they get all tight with the line and they completely destroy the vitality of the drawing. Does that make sense? Which is why I use a rub down transfer method, because then I capture my drawing that I liked. And yeah, I'm going to go in and reinforce it and everything, but I love going back I love push-pull techniques. So when certain things get lost in the, like, let's say the water, when you stretch the paper, I love that because then I get to pull things back out of it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Translation being, I like my process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's a pretty standard process, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know how many people do it now, because sometimes you get people and they go, oh, I love all that old school shit. And I go, it's not old school. Where do you get that it's old school? How is good drawing, good design, painting, how is that old school? You know what I mean? Because I'm not doing it digitally. That's BS. That's not old school. That's a different medium. Does that make sense? I don't like that discussion of modernity or whatever in context. This has nothing to do with that. You know what I mean? My answer to that is like, you don't have your skills together. The only thing you know how to do is digital stuff. And then if I put you in a sketchbook, you fall apart. I see it all the time. Okay. There's too many tricks you can do digitally. Digital tools are great, but you need your fundamentals. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. I know I'm ranting, but so what? I think this stuff's important. You want to do this for a living or whatever you want to do. The skill set's got to be there, man. Okay. And having said that, I've worked with a lot of people who didn't have a skill set. I have no idea how they have a career. Okay. So you're going to go. So now the trick is, and one thing, if you look at movies, right? Like if you look, even The Incredibles, okay, The Incredibles, they're supposed to be living in mundane suburbia. They've been relegated, pushed off out of the spotlight, and now they just live these mundane suburban lives, right? So my mind, I would go, okay, where is mundane suburbia? I mean, it's all over the place, Southern California, Cerritos, it's, you know, wherever. Vanilla track housing, that to me is suburban, that kind of thing, right? So then I'd have to go, okay, I'd probably go to the neighborhood, I'd walk around, I'd just do sketches, and I'd go, how do I make this stuff interesting and fun? You know what I mean? These are a bunch of stucco, you know, there's a lot of it in Downey and places like that where it's that, it's sort of it's like stucco strip mall Mediterranean, really boring stuff, right? Then I look at that and go, how do I make the house I grew up in interesting? It's not a very interesting house, just a little track house, right? And then what did The Incredibles do? They took, and I think it was the right move. I'm not knocking it, but it's like they went, oh, let's make the whole neighborhood like super pushed mid-century modern, right? Like a Palm Springs neighborhood. That ain't boring suburbia, really. I mean, everybody wants to live in those kind of neighborhoods, you know what I mean? But it was the right choice for them. But you know, it also was easier for them to make that visually appealing, right? Does that make sense? So, you know, and I don't know if I've seen too many movies. If you look at Lady and the Tramp, I think they based it on Victorian or something. I can't remember, but it was a Victorian. Okay, so what did they do? Again, they picked a very interesting design style. Makes your job easier. Okay. And I can go on and on. There's probably a million of them. I can't think of one off the top of my head that's just where they base the design just on like really boring suburban architecture. I can't think of one. Okay. And usually that's because they're going to go to something that gives them a little more meat on the bone to play with. Right. Okay. Like, like, right, you know, Norwalk. I grew up in Norwalk. Norwalk is the most boring. I mean, there's nothing in Norwalk's really that interesting. You know what I mean? There's just not. It's a boring. We were driving through I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. My girlfriend, she's never been there. She goes, "You grew up here? Like what? You know?" She goes, "It looks." And then you know, there's parts of it like you go through the freeway part. It looks like a bomb went off or something. You know. Okay, so that's that one. Do you have any other questions?
No, not right now.
I'm being coherent, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes I'm rambling. I'm going, am I being coherent?
There's a lot of good information in your rambling.
Okay, good. Like I get excited about this stuff and then you know, going off on these tangents about, because this is, I fixate on this stuff. Okay. And again, one of the things, and I'm always looking for holes in the program, not or the department or whatever you want to call it. And a lot of those things are holes that I've seen. I didn't teach for like 15 or 20 years or whatever. I taught a little bit at the beginning and then I didn't teach for 15, 20 years, right? But I was always interested in it. And if I was driving around, I might go, I want to go check out the art department in that college, just because I thought it was fun. And then a lot of the things that I noticed at that time, when you're working in the industry, now you've been in the industry for 10 years, is you go, they're not training anybody to get a job. You know what I mean? They're not training anybody to get a job. And I'd argue also, by the way, this industry, or whatever industry you want to call it, but especially the entertainment industry, it's so different now for all of you, if you want to go into that business or even the design business or whatever. When I was younger, everything changed maybe every decade. It seemed to be every decade. Technology didn't change for, I mean, how long was everybody using markers? 40 years? 50 years? I mean, a long time. And the big change there was before that was watercolor. They used watercolor, then they went to markers. They went from gouache to acrylic in like the 50s. And then none of that changed. When I was imaginary, I was still using acrylic, right? Now everything fundamentally changes exponentially really fast. Okay. So when I go, oh, and I might have said this, but last time I went over to Disney to animate the animation thing, which was, I don't know, a year ago, maybe, especially the time before that. So maybe it's about 2 years ago. Just in the time I hadn't been there, it had completely changed. Okay. Like you walk into the Disney animation now, and it's like there's no drafting tables. It doesn't even look, I mean, it's a fun place, but it's weird. You don't see the evidence of what's going on there. Does that make sense? You see all these sketches on the walls and all that kind of stuff, but it's fun. You know, it's not clinical like an office building, but it's also like, wow, there's just no, you know, somebody with a big cool drawing on their drafting board with all their paint over here and their tools and all that kind of stuff, which I love. It's not there anymore. So the evidence of the process is basically invisible. You know what I mean? And then I noticed how much the drawing skills have dropped off over there. It actually blew my mind how much the drawing skills have dropped off there. And at first I was all judgmental about it. And I go, this is bullshit. They need to know how to draw. And then I kind of rethought that and went, you know, that's kind of actually obnoxious just because you knew how to draw and you had this opinion that everybody should know how to draw and design and paint and all these kind of things. It's like 3D is their medium and that's what they are great at. Okay. So I kind of changed my thinking. I go, you can't do that. Or showing them techniques and things like that. Actually it was watercolor. I was showing watercolor sketching. And they get their mind all blown about it. And I'm just kind of going, you shouldn't be getting your mind blown about this. It's just kind of basic shit. You know what I mean? And some stuff I get, but anyway, it completely changed my behavior or thinking, which is good. And it also changed my thinking. I mean, the only reason I do those workshops over at Disney is because I get in there and I'm trying to keep my knowledge as current as I can. Okay. Because otherwise I'd start to become invaluable as an instructor if I become one of these old farts who doesn't know anything that's going on out there. And also being willing to change my thinking, and you guys got to be doing that too. You guys have to do it way more than I did. You guys have to be constantly evolving in your thinking all the time, and you cannot get rooted in old farty kind of stuff. Okay. Like as much as I talk about this traditional stuff and all that kind of stuff, I'm not rooted in the past. I love all the modern stuff that we have. We're doing a class. I've got a TV studio in here. You know what I mean? Thank God, or we'd all be screwed, right? And all these tools are great. All I'm saying is just make sure you got your fundamentals. Yeah. And make sure you're researching your teachers. All right, where's Ebony?
I'm right here.
Got to flesh it out more, yeah?
Definitely.
What's going on right here?
I couldn't decide whether I wanted it to be like some type of reflective dome or if I want to put like an actual character in there, which I feel like I will.
You got to put a character. If you don't put a character in there, it's going to feel like you're avoiding putting a character in there.
Yeah, because it's on a small page now, but once it's like bigger, it's going to feel empty.
Well, yes. Well, okay. So here's another thing that's going on here that I see this a lot. We've sort of got a big picture plane with a lot of little elements in it. Okay. And what that tends to do is sort of disconnect everything a little bit. Your eye starts to dance around where what you want your eye to do is go boom, first read, bang, second read, boom, third read, and you control that. Does that make sense? So this I got to turn that off. Those things are annoying. Okay. Like this needs to be more important. You know, is it angled maybe where it's flying in? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me. Now see how I'm not turning my board? That's why my ellipse is all wonky. I should have turned my board and got a nice angle. Okay. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. Actually, I am worrying about it. You know, you could put some of this. Now, one of the things you have to do when you're doing this kind of stuff, you got to make big statements. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I want something down here. Maybe there's, or I have to go this way. Maybe there's some silly propulsion device here. Just so I can make it a little more interesting as an object or whatever. So this comes down to the same thing where I'm always talking about, where it's hang on. It's now I lost my train of thought, sorry. Okay, so then I could have something coming out of here. Actually, I wouldn't make it smoky, I'd make it cool. Okay, then this, and then maybe, you know, these are faded back here and I can have some of these planets. And then the other thing I would do is I'd put like nebula stuff in there to fill space. I just did this in another class. It was digital though, but and somebody, I forgot what we were working on, but somebody had something like this and I just filled some of the space with like that nebula kind of stuff and it just filled up the space nicely. And then you have little pinpoints of stars and things like that to kind of pull the whole unit together, right? And then this could be, you know, maybe it's got a couple of moons. I don't like that there. I'd change that. Okay, and then this thing, if I'm going to have this here, this has to make a big statement, this ring. So that means this is now going to have to change. So I'd probably block this in first. And I don't know if I'd put it there. Or maybe I just... Maybe it comes out this way. Then around here, I always put that blue glow around it because that's the atmosphere, picks up this atmosphere. And don't get hung up on like, because I get people all the time and there's no atmosphere on Saturn. It's like, who cares? It's a planet. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not doing this for NASA. If I was doing it for NASA, I'd care about that. I'm just trying to get believability and something that looks cool, right? It's cold in here. I turn the heater off. And then here, you know, I'd have the little steering wheel. I'd have them steering here, sitting forward. Then I can design some silly looking thing. Right?
Yeah.
There's one thing that I really love, and I see it once in a while, where people just draw, they just hit something, where they draw something that's just super funny looking. You know what I mean? I think that's a result of just doing a lot of them. I mean, for me, it is. And then when you get like an alien or something like that, especially in this case where we don't really have it, unless you have a story in your head, I can just make them as silly as I want. You know what I mean? And I tend to err towards silly. You know, I like drawing silly stuff. I don't really like drawing, I don't know, entertainment stuff. It's just not my thing. You know what I mean? I mean, that's stuff. If you pay me, I'm into it. If you're not paying me, I'm not really into it. You know, and then these different, maybe I could put some craters on one of them. Maybe this one's a moon, you know, and then I'm going to have all these stars, a little nebula. And again, the nebula, if I'm going in here and doing that in watercolor, let's put a thing here. I'm going to come in at, hang on. I'm going to come in. Let's just throw blue in here just so we have a color here. But I'm in watercolor, how I would do this. Where's my, oh, there it is. God, I don't like the way they broke up the palettes in Photoshop. I'm just going to throw this down, then I'll adjust it. Because when you're doing this kind of stuff in watercolor, you've really got to think about how you're going to build it, right? So again, I'd probably wet down this background area and start to flood some of this in here. But while I was flooding that, I'd also be picking up, let's pick up some of this. Or let's just do this. Well, let's pull some reference. Oh, God, leave me alone. What the hell? So what we're kind of going for here. Oh, this is cool. Yeah. Is this kind of thing, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and that's, you know, it'll give me the space vibe, you know, and I'm going to simplify all that, obviously. But all I really using this for right now is just a little bit of, just get me started with some color. Oops. And I'd be doing this wet into wet, right? Because then the colors will start intermingling. And then I have to introduce some different colors in here, which I'd be doing again, wet into wet. Let's get some of this. Why didn't it? Oh, here it is. I start getting some of these other colors in here, and I'm going to stylize and push and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just start, and always start, you know, again, really loose and just start kind of figuring it out as I'm going. But you want to have sort of a plan in your head, like, okay, I'm going to do that this way, and I'm going to do this way, because that's going to give me the best whatever. Okay, so you get what I would start doing here, right?
Yeah.
Now I'd have to keep building this and all that kind of stuff. Digitally, it only takes like 20 minutes, but you know, and then I'm going to go, okay, let's get some more just color information. So let's go to here. Actually, I'm going to go to a really bright blue.
Do you think at the end I should go and maybe like with some white gouache to get some of those bright?
Yeah,
spots?
you're probably going to kind of have to in here with this. What my thing with that though is I always tell people, because we are going to talk about that, okay? I'm trying to unfold everything in steps so it doesn't start getting overwhelming. The thing I always tell people about that is like try and okay there. Try and think about it without that. Like try and build the thing just as a watercolor painting, and then you can use gouache for little places that you need to use it. Where it falls apart is when people go, I'm doing this watercolor painting, and now because I'm not really very competent with it, I'm using a ton of gouache, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. Okay, it sort of disconnects. Hang on, I got to get rid of this. Where did Elizabeth go? Oh, there she is. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to come in here and let's see if I can do this. You know, and you might do this with a spatter brush. I probably would if I could, if I had one. I don't have one in here. I don't want these two. And then I'm going to ease off of that, how bright those are, because I don't want them all bright. So on and so forth. And then I'm going to do a little bit of this stuff. You know, and I'm going to stylize all this stuff. That could get a little softer. That's kind of cool like that. And you can see how you can start put together this thing for pretty simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go, okay, now I got all this cool lighting in here I can play around with. You know, so I can come in here and start, like this planet obviously is going to have a bunch of value. So now I've got an excuse to go, whatever this color is, or what, let me get a better brush. You know, I get a rim light. I can light all this up in an interesting way. Maybe back here, I'll use this warm. So I'll light this with a warm. Maybe this is a cool, or I'll use this cool. And I turn the form with that light or warm cool thing, right? Always thinking about that stuff. Because if I don't think about that stuff, I end up with a bunch of flat shapes and it's boring. Right. I'm thinking about, and again, this would probably be a wet to wet wash on this surface here. And I'd probably flood this with a little bit of this warmth here and start flooding this back here with a little bit of that. But as it's reflecting off of, you know, a metallic surface or whatever it is, right? You know, this could be something really cool, this propulsion system. It looked like you had kind of a chemtrail thing, or what's that called? Contrail thing. Chemtrail is like a conspiracy theory, I think, right? Yeah. And then, you know, maybe this back here is like, let's put this on its own layer real quick. Oop, I don't like that. That's no good. Hang on. Let's go more. And there's some really, I just saw a documentary. I didn't even know they had a documentary on this guy. I forgot his name now. But he's sort of the king of like probably 60s, maybe into the 70s science fiction stuff. So maybe this becomes some sort of reddish planet. And the planets are fun to play around with too, because I can come in here and start to screw around with them, make up my own planets and things.
That's why I wanted to do like this space thing, because I feel like I could play around with the watercolor and like experiment with a lot of techniques.
Oh yeah. You know, maybe there's a little bit of a, let's try this. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Well, actually, it's kind of fun to take for this kind of thing. Take a toothbrush. Like I just got a toothbrush that was worn out. And when they get worn out, I throw them in the dishwasher so they're not disgusting. And then I throw it in my tool bag, you know? Let's get a dirty brush here, or a rough brush or whatever. I think I have some up here. Because you can do the same stuff with like dry brush and stuff in watercolor, and see how you can get these cool brushy kind of things going on. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I could start to build a planet. Again, probably wet into wet kind of stuff. So on and so forth. Okay. You know, and then I did this big plan. Actually, this idea right here, I just found this. Same idea. Where'd it go? Same idea, right? So, you know, that planet down there makes a big statement. This is gouache, but it makes a big statement, right? It's my second gouache painting I ever did. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, not so far.
There's somebody that used to do, and I wish I could figure out who it was. I can't remember. They used to do a lot of these kind of space paintings, but they're all stylized. It'd be like a cat flying a spaceship or a flying saucer, kind of like that. And they were really fun, but I can't remember who did them. I'll try and find them. Okay. Where am I at? Okay, who's this? Okay, where you at?
Oh, hi, I'm here.
We're starting to get a little anime here, correct?
Yeah.
I'm not going to really worry about it too much, but anime really drives me crazy, to be honest. The problem, part of the big problem I have with it is you're not really embracing your own style. You're embracing a bunch of style elements from anime. Does that make sense?
Actually, I'm not.
I don't think it's a bad drawing. The only thing I'd say is maybe loosen it up a little bit. They're a little stiff.
Oh, okay.
But like, and it could be simple things. Like I'd really look at like, did you pose these out at all?
Sorry. Can you repeat again?
Did you pose out any of these poses?
I try. Yeah, I tried one of them.
Yeah, because like some of the, like, I don't think this is too bad. I think that like, it's just simple stuff. Like, I don't know, this arm feels like it could probably go back a little bit.
Okay.
You know, because you're kind of leaning back like that. I don't know if you'd stay upright. I think you might lean back a little more, right?
Oh, yeah.
I would just check it, okay? And then what's this? Is this like a headdress or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the other thing is get rid of the pointy hair, okay? Because you're going to want to loosen that up. You could loosen it up in the paint. That's fine. The pointy hair, I mean, it's not bad. It's just all these pointy shapes start to become kind of off-putting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Exactly what I was just saying about Klaus, where some of those pointy design elements, it just turned me off. Okay, they're kind of severe. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then how are these? So here's the other problem I have. Now we've sort of got these elements on the face that are, so now the face is a very flat plane with a couple of graphic shapes on it, correct?
Yes.
So I want you to get, and you can do this a little bit in the paint, but you want to work it out. Like, how am I going to get a little more information on that face? Okay. Like, and the only reason I'm saying that, there's nothing wrong with doing flat shapes and all that kind of stuff from a stylistic perspective. That's up to you later. But right now I don't want, it's very easy for and I have this happen in here sometimes, where people just started doing line drawing, put a flat wash in it, put two black eyes on it, and they go, okay, there it is. It's like, that's not enough. Not for this. I'm trying to get you to actually understand how to use this medium. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So give me a little more information in there. This isn't too bad. And then I go, okay, what I do, okay, so look at the pose. Like, I think this is pretty good, the hand right here, but then this arm is going, I'm not going to do that. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm going to go, like, that's where I say pose it out, you know, because, and I see this all the time, especially with anime stuff. The poses don't make any sense. Because then when I go, would you move your hand out like that? Is that normal? It's not normal. This is normal. That's why you got to go out and draw people all the time, by the way, right? And just pose it out. right? And if you need to, take a reference shot or whatever. I just pose them out usually just so I get the acting of it a little bit. And I double check myself and I go, would I stand like that? You know, if I'm talking to you and I'm gesturing, what am I doing with this other hand? You know, because you'll get people and they put it down on the side and it's like, people don't stand like that. You know what I mean?
Yes,
what are they going to do? You know, like, where's the hand? And then it's tricky because a lot of the times people do this because a flat forward view is a lot easier than getting this or this. You know, it starts to place things in places that are a little trickier. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I mean, you could kind of go, if you're flourishing, you might do that. Okay. So that could make sense. Okay. Because I don't think the pose is bad. I think it's pretty close. And then here in all this, you're going to need a little bit of information. Why does it keep going to purple? You're going to need a little bit of information in here. There's probably going to be a fold right down there and just enough. And it's not about all this like,
okay.
We're not doing realism. I get that. But all I'm saying is things like strategic folds or to me are design elements.
Yeah.
They're just design elements. So when I have all this, like if you look at these legs, if I painted that, is it just going to be one big flat wash? I don't want that. I want some things to break the shapes up so they become more interesting. Yeah?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay. So like here, there's going to be tension here. It's going to pull here. It might even here. We'll get sort of things like that. This is going to pull up here. I might come in here, depending on how this is, you know, and get a fold going over here. I might show the other side of the sleeve a little bit. I might cheat on this and pull it down more like that. So I see the sleeve wrapping around the arm, right? Sometimes I cheat those things a little bit, you know, depending on where the camera is, right? If the camera's up here, I'm probably not going to see that, but sometimes I'll trick it a little bit.
Okay.
This arm right here, that could overlap, that line can overlap the back. So we can start showing that that form's in front of the other form. And then this, I don't know, I might put a, whatever it's made out, I might put a seam on it or something. Maybe some stitching or something here, just make it a little more interesting. I think this hair, I wouldn't worry about it. I think you can loosen that up in the paint. Okay. I think it's pretty good. And what's this? Is this like a head scarf or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So another thing's like, I'd probably pull this out a little bit, make it, and then it's going to come back here. It's probably going to get a fold right there. It's going to come down. Maybe it's going to have a little bit of excess here. How does it connect? You know, does it spill over the shoulder a little bit? And then whatever you're going to do with the little more information there. This is starting to work. I'd probably, okay, so here's another thing. When you're doing, and another thing, you're going to have a seam down these pants here. Again, that's not about realism. It's about, I need to break up that shape. It's too flat, right? The other thing that's going to happen is from the rear, it's going to pull up some folds like that.
Oh, okay.
Then here, this is probably going to get a little more. So we want to make bigger statements on things like folds. Is this a backpack? What is that?
Yeah, it's just a backpack.
Yeah, so that I'd probably soften up a little bit. Give it a little more. I'm seeing inside a little. Maybe it kind of shifts here. How does this work? Again, this is a transition thing. You can't just put it there. It's got to, and it can just be a shape there that just shows that. Make a bigger statement. If this is a zipper, you know, that pull can get bigger. This is going to start to weight on itself a little bit and it's going to bulge. You know, and I'd probably make a bigger statement on the, do you see how making a bigger statement on these things, you guys, helps?
Yeah, it seems I'm more clear in the line.
Tiny, timid statements, especially in this type of illustration. You want to make big, bold statements and then, you know, push the shapes and the sizes and things like that so they're readable, so they're not a bunch of timid little shapes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Casey? There's going to be a fold right there, probably. You know, and you can see how when you start to add, you know, build into the shapes, it kind of helps a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'd probably, this is outside, so I'd probably put a little grass here where she's hitting the ground. It's not going to just be a hard edge, right?
Okay.
You know, and then if there's is this a night scene?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you're probably going to get some nice cast shadows here. I don't know if I'd put a secondary light source right behind her like that.
Oh, okay.
Because this way you can get a pretty strong cast shadow here. You know, same thing here. You're going to get some pull folds. You know, give me some more information on the boots. I mean, they're drawn pretty good. But like, you know, is there a seam here? Can I see under the shoe a little bit? Like your shoes, by the way, they don't do that. Okay. A shoe goes down, and I'm just going to start with let's just do this. Let's say that's the calf, and then we're going into the shoe. Your shoe does that. The toe on your shoe does that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Don't lay flat on the ground like that. They're like that. Okay. So a lot of times if it's ground level or something, I'll show that little flip right there. So I can show a little bit of the bottom of the sole. Then this is going to kick out a little bit. And then, you know, I can just put like, I don't know, put a tongue on here and some shoelaces and just give myself enough information. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Enough information. So, because like structurally your shoe looks pretty good. And that's usually where people fall apart. So now just give it a little bit of surface form. It's cake decorating. Now you got the big structure there. Now you can decorate it a little bit. Give it some seams or whatever you like. Okay. Might be a fold here and there, but shoes for the most part have something, you know. Now I know that, you know, is it a buckle here? You know, is there a little bit of a fold? Is there something there, you know, a seam or something? Is there reinforcement, whatever it is, right? Some, you know, thing there. Here you got buckles, so I'd make sure that I see that. Maybe this kind of overhangs a little bit where the buckle's pulled out. Why am I doing that? I want to have overlap. I want to break silhouettes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I think your drawing's pretty good though.
Okay, thank you.
Work out this tree, okay? The video I'm going to put up for you guys hopefully will help with that, okay?
Oh, okay.
And again, I don't want to put that up there, and then I want to make clear why I'm doing this. I'm just doing it because I think it'll help you with kind of breaking down those kind of structures, okay? Because you want to stylize all that stuff too, and you want to design all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Good. I think it's good. Can you guys give me 2 seconds? Go get a cup of coffee. And you guys can too. I'll be right back. I'll just run in there and run back. I think, okay, so like here, I want a little more information here. Yeah?
I don't know what I put for that now. That's the only issue.
Say it again.
I don't know what I'd be able to put for there though.
Well, right now there's no shape in it, you know, or no information in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, you know, is there, you know, I'd just go look at bed frames that are similar to what I want to do, and I'd stylize them just like anything else. You know, maybe it's got sort of wainscoting down here. I don't know. Maybe it's got drops into a ball down here, and I don't know. Maybe there's a you know, a post on it just to make it feel more finished. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like kind of like what you're doing here, but like now it needs one more pass at like just stuff. Whatever that is. And I think these can probably, like this is just sitting on here, and I have a feeling it would probably have another little piece of trim there. Like maybe like that. Did you look at any reference?
For the bed, no.
Okay, that's the problem. And also this is, you're going to hear me say transition like ad nauseum. Like the ball usually isn't just sitting on a post. It's usually a ball, then, you know, it's decorative, right? Yeah?
Yeah, sorry. My mic was muffled. But yeah, I hear you.
Okay. And then a little more information on how the beds folds. You got quite a bit in here, which is good. Here. Is there a pattern on here or anything? Or it's just a color? It doesn't have to have a pattern. It actually might get too busy.
I was gonna put one, but then I kind of didn't like that I was gonna put stripes maybe, but then I thought it blended in too much with the tentacles, so I decided not to. And I filled the empty space with the cat.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then what's happening down here?
I kind of.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I kind of overthought it a little bit. This whole thing, and I thought about it being like an actual children's book, and this page is just a still image of like the monster keeping the kid awake with playing with toys and eating snacks and playing.
Okay, I make a bigger, I really like this little splash coming out of here and all that. Okay, so down here you can see how visually it's getting sort of tangled up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I might, instead of having so much information, and also I might get some overlap here. So if I have this tentacle coming out and it's got this stuffed animal or whatever wrapping around it, I can make sort of a bigger statement here. I can overlap the bed frame a little bit and simplify it a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you could have another one coming out here maybe, but you just want to get it where it feels not complicated, that you can read it really quick, right?
Right.
This I also think can make a bigger statement. Whatever that is. Here, I like this overlap of this. I might make a little bigger statement on the car. This is pretty good right here. I don't think I'd put a point on the end of that. I think I'd soften that up a little bit.
Okay.
Same thing here. The hair you can do in watercolor, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Make sure. I like the poster on the wall. I like the stars. That's great. Is this going to be night?
Yeah, it will be.
So it's going to be a dark room, or is it lit?
I was thinking of having it lit, but then I kind of wanted the stars to show, so no, the room's going to be a little dim.
Okay, so pretty soon you got to start thinking about how you're going to unify all this and how it's going to work, right?
Right.
Get these legs here to work a little better. Is it one? Is that legs on the table, or is that like drapery?
There's supposed to be legs. I didn't really put much thought into the table, admittedly.
Yeah, I might make this a nightstand. Get some big drawers in it or something. Makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
Is the drawer pulled out? Because kids are messy, Make sure this is kind of working. Like the book, I might tilt. I like this. Sometimes like these areas down here, I might do a little like wainscoting or whatever that's called, wainscoting, whatever it's called, to break up the wall, maybe. There's also a balance here where you don't want to start getting too confusing with too much stuff. So something like that, I might just really lightly indicate because it's a dark room and I'm not going to get that much shadow value on it and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
So far, no.
And I'd put a little more information on the face, right?
Like eyebrows or something, or do you want me to detail
I'd
of
probably figure out the eyes a little more. Is there something you can do with the eyes to get a little more? This could probably just be a smudgy value, like her nose.
Yeah, I could do that.
I mean, you have quite a bit going on here, so I'm not really that worried that it's going to be because you have a lot of stuff going on in the room in general. Again, here, got to get this more natural, these clothing things. I don't think I'd probably get rid of this.
Get rid of what?
Hang on. This line, this hard line right here.
Okay.
And then kind of go, how's this going to actually meet here? Oops. How's this going to meet here? I think I'd have it more against the arm here. And then I might get rid of that a little bit, maybe put a little fold going this way. Fold cutting across somewhere maybe. And then maybe, yeah, that's fine. I could give that collar a finish.
Okay.
And then again, if I can get like maybe one fold in the sleeve or something like that, that's probably enough. Might just be that or something. This guy looks pretty good. Now him. Yeah, you're sort of in refinement, right?
Yeah.
And simplify these and then like this, the milk carton, maybe oops, I gotta calibrate. Hang on. This drives me crazy. By the way, I've got 2 more, I don't know, probably hour-long tutorials I have to finish this week for you guys. I'm still ahead of it a little bit because we haven't started with watercolor. So I'll try and get those done this week, okay? I'm going to try and get them done this week, and I'm going to put them up, and I'm going to put them up for the purpose of, I like to put these things up if I can get the sort of discussion ahead of the class. So then when you come into class, you have questions. Does that make sense? So you can look at that and go, okay, I didn't get that part, I didn't get the part, blah, blah, blah. And that way I can kind of control the message a little more in the communication or the visuals or whatever. And then I'll also work in class. So I want you to understand I'll also work in class. Okay. So I'll have probably next week, I'll have all my watercolor stuff set up again. I'll have the new camera angle. I'll put a video up beforehand, and then I'll just do live demos of questions you're asking. Okay. So I might give this a little more oomph. And I'd probably simplify this a little bit. Oops. Get out of there. Soften this edge. And then I'd probably see if I could simplify this, It's almost, I'd probably make this I'd make these tentacles a little fatter maybe. Just so they eat up a little more space and you don't have to have, it gets a little bit, confusing when you have too many small shapes, when it's like, okay, we can kind of chub this up and make it one statement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then this hand, you don't need a lot of information here, but just maybe separate the finger here. Make sure that doesn't feel so blobby. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And hands, they're just, I think we talked about this, but they're just, a lot of times if I'm doing a hand facing down, like just on the side of the body or something, I don't overdo it. I kick a finger out, might indicate that a little bit. And in the right context, just that little bit can be enough. Instead of doing this, then I'll just kick the finger out. I'll fuse all this stuff together. And because it's not the star, if it's not the star and it's not that important, I just want to simplify it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if all of a sudden you start overdoing the hands like in a children's book, it can actually get kind of creepy looking. Because like, why is there such an anatomical human hand there. It doesn't fit anything else. And again, that's that transitional stuff. You're learning how to do that in life drawing, which is great. But now we got to learn how to simplify it and make it work for this environment. Okay. You're always just designing to a project. Okay. And to a certain extent, depending on what type of designer you are coming onto this, you know, if I'm working at Disney, I obviously I have to get with the Disney thing, right? I can't come in and go, hey, I want to do all this stuff that Mike Light's doing. They're going to go, we don't care. It doesn't make any sense here, you know? And there's a danger in that with designers. Where they want to do this, they want to do what they want to do. So they might like whatever. They might like Star Wars. They might like anime. They might like Marvel. And they start coming back to you with solutions that are what they like to do. Does that make sense? And it's a huge red flag when you're hiring or you have hired someone, because it's happened to me. And I'm going, that's not what I asked you to do. Yeah, but it's cool. And they start defending it. And I go, it's not cool. Number one, it's cheesy. And that's telling me you don't really have much sophistication as a designer if you think this is cool. It's not cool. The other thing is, I can go hire anybody just to make pictures of whatever the hell they want to make. You know what I mean? It's like I'm asking you to make something that's manufacturable, that fits the product brief, the creative brief, that is on budget, that I can get past in that place, the Disney board, that I'm going to be able to run it past the Disney board and they're going to approve it. That I can hit the time frame to produce this product that's going to land in the stores with the movie opening. I mean, there's a lot of parameters around any project you work around. If it's a children's book, they're going to go, it's got to be done by boom. And it's going to be it's going to be edited. Like, and that's another thing you have to be cool with. You know, if it's a horrible editor and they're just making comments to make comments, that sucks. Okay. I get that. But a good editor is great. And I notice that a lot of people who aren't very experienced in the world of this, they go, I don't want somebody to tell me how to do this. And I'm like, A, these people have a lot of experience. And B, they're looking at your work from a fresh perspective. And C, nothing you do in a commercial area is not somehow going to have other people's hands on it somehow. Does that make sense? Now, I have a children's book. I think I mentioned this, and I'm trying to get all that done right now. If a publisher comes back to me and goes, hey, we really like the story, but we want to put a different illustrator on it, then I would say, now, either I illustrate it and write it or forget it. Now, if you want to edit the book, I'm fine with that. If you can make it better, great. But I'm illustrating it. You know what I mean? I don't think they would come back to me with that comment, but if they did, because they do a lot, by the way, they don't like the writer to illustrate it and they don't like the illustrator to write it. Okay. I don't know how, I think that's still like that. Okay. Now I have a certain pedigree where I think I can get around that. Okay. Because they're going to go, this guy's got a bunch of experience and he's not just some dad who's like, hey, I got a story. You know what I mean? I have a background. So that gives me a little bit of entree into things. Okay. And I think that's probably because a lot of times the illustrators don't have a good idea or I don't know, it just doesn't work for them. There's a lot of rules around this world, by the way. Okay. A lot of gatekeepers, and you have to get through all these gatekeepers to get anything done. It's a reason I've sat on it for so long, is because it's like, I'm used to just knocking the door down and going, okay, listen to me here, you know, but you can't do that in that world. Okay. Any other questions?
No, that covers it.
Hey, are you going to have like, I don't know, wood on the floor or anything here?
I didn't actually think about the floor. I think that I might just make it carpet and have it like textured a little bit with like little fuzzy marks.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll work. Good.
Yeah, I'll do that.
That's good. It's good. Like, it looks like you worked on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I check the chat every now and then. Okay, somebody was talking about this emitting light and all that. The stuff that's good about that is that you really need to start right now. You need to start thinking about certain things that aren't going to happen for a little bit. And I think it's Sydney made that comment. Start thinking about where the light sources are so you can get maximum cool looking illustration, correct? So yeah, you know, if you go, hey, if the monster emits a warm light, then it's going to be a warm light in all this cool night environment. You know what I mean? Or maybe the lamp's on or whatever, right? And then you got to really think about where all the light's spilling, because it's all got to be controlled. Okay, a simple way to do that, by the way, shit, I just closed that. Hang on. And I do this in a lot of different ways, but one thing you can do really simply, let's put just a gray value on here so we're not looking at color. Come on. Oh, that's so annoying. Let's try that. Sometimes it can help to do this. Then I'm putting this on multiply. Again, I can do this in a lot of different ways, but so now I've got my night view. Then I get a soft brush maybe. Now the way I usually do this, let's see if I can do it. I'm going to put you don't have to do this, you could just erase it out, but I like to do this because I can put it back in. So I just put a layer mask on it. I'm going to get a soft brush. And I'm going to probably pull down the opacity because I don't want it to go 100% too fast. And I could just go and start to go, okay, here's a light source. And this way, I'm just pulling out light for now and just seeing where it all spills and make sure that it works. It's probably going to kind of fade out over here. Hang on. All right. And then it's going to spill out over here. Let's go here. And then now I look at this and I go, okay, that's the lamp. So right in here, there's going to be a really hot light source because the bulb's in there, right? Where'd you guys go? Does that make sense? There,
Yeah,
when you're doing, things like that, you want to take advantage of, there's the point source of the light, and then it all drifts off from there, which means that unless there's something highly reflective, the light's always going to start fading off from that main point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so then I can start to do, so then I go, okay, now the light's all going to spill off about there, somewhere around there. So that's telling me like, okay, now this room's all empty. So then I go, do I need a window over here maybe for moonlight to come fading in? To somebody else's point, are these eyes giving off light? Is the cool environment maybe, so maybe it lights it up down here a little bit. And then this could catch a little light off that. Probably could get a little light in here. It just depends on how strong that light source is. And that's up to you how strong it is. And we could start just kind of building our lighting scheme that way. Does that make sense?
I like this a lot, actually.
All I did was I put a gray layer over it and put it on multiply. So that means I can see through it. And you can either just erase it out. The reason I like to use a layer mask is then I can flip this to white, go to my brush again, and I can paint things back in. So I can really paint it in and out and in and out and in and out. And again, it's the same thing as your sketching. I'm just trying a bunch of stuff. You know what I mean? But what this does is it locks the whole room together uniformly with a value. So I'm not trying, and then again, what can happen when people start trying to do lighting is they're piecemealing it. So then it all disconnects and it doesn't make any sense. Does that make sense? This is no different than the big to small idea in drawing, the big to small idea in painting. It's the same thing. Big idea and then start shaping it out. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And again, I just used a layer mask. Sorry. Away from me now. Okay, there's that. All right, that all makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So now go and just, when I get it this far along, then I'm excited because I can really start to push it to the next level. And loosen things up. And I think everybody's battle is this battle to get a tight thing, but also loose at the same time. Okay, who's this? Kayleen? Where you at?
That one's mine. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so what's happening here? It's a pet store, right?
Yes. So I didn't separate the two drawings on the top, but those are going to be two different ideas.
Okay, so what's happening here?
That one's an alternative like idea. Instead of it having either a bird or a fish, it's going to be a cat, and you kind of see it through the glass. The cat looking at the girl.
Is she meeting this cat? Is it going to be their first time they're meeting?
Yeah.
Like in the pet store?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like love at first sight, right?
Right.
Okay, I like that. I'm a sucker for sentimental stuff, man. I got these pictures I took. I don't know if I told you guys this. I went to the Rockwell show over at the Hilbert Museum. And there was this older couple. And I never told you guys this, right? There was this older, I mean, they were old. I mean, they were probably in their mid 80s or something, maybe even, I don't know. They're old. And they're looking at all these Rockwell covers and stuff. That was their time frame, when they were younger. And they're, obviously they were married and all that. And they're like looking at all the covers and they're finding all the little Easter eggy things in there and laughing about it. And their posture, they had their arms around each other. They loved each other. You know what I mean? I took pictures of it because I go, I'm going to draw that. I want to use that somehow because it's nice to see that in a world where everything just seems so negative. You know what I mean? Two people who not only loved each other, they liked each other. They were having fun together. They still had their hands all over each other and they're 85. God knows how long they've been married. You know what I mean? And it was really interesting. And I have those pictures and the posture of them is because I took them without them knowing it, obviously, because I would have loved to have drawn them, but I couldn't draw them in there. But so, I captured that just to kind of go, that posture was really interesting to me. Their posture, part of the posture was their age and part of and then the posture of them, being affectionate to each other, right? That's the kind of stuff that to me, you're always going out and you're becoming, I don't know what that is, a sociologist or a cultural anthropologist or whatever it is. That's kind of part of your job. You know what I mean? Is to go mine all these things and catalog them, whether it's a sketch or a little picture. And that's the other thing that's so great now, man, is you can just take endless pictures of stuff. You know what I mean? But don't go out in the world and constantly take pictures, then go home and draw from it. No. Do draw from it in the moment, okay? Because it's going to improve your drawing. Nothing is like data entry for the brain like sketching. Nothing, okay? If I draw something, man, it goes into the data bank and I can usually pull it back out a year later or whatever and at least do a reasonable drawing of that thing out of my head, right? And then your brain starts learning how to catalog things. And as you're going and you're doing a sketchbook all the time, as you're walking through the world, it trains you how to catalog information. It's weird. And then you're always cataloging information. Like you see something interesting, you go, oh, you throw it in the data bank, right? If you don't have real world experience, you're not bringing nothing to the table, okay? I like this one down here. Where are you at?
Right here.
Which one do you like?
I don't have a preference. I think they would all be really cute. I guess maybe if I did the fish one, I could play with the lighting some more because you know how sometimes the fish are like glowing in their little neon lights.
Sure.
But
So this one cuts off like, hang on. Like here.
Yeah, right about there.
Okay. So now, oh, sorry, I got a soft brush. Hang on. Okay, so here, here, here. I think, again, I think this fish could get bigger. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Or just more prominent. It doesn't have to be as big as I'm making it, but I think, you know, and then he can have this little, I like to make bigger statements on this stuff. A little treasure chest. They kind of go like that. You know, they have all this, they have all kinds of crazy stuff they put in these fish tanks. It's fun. And then, yeah, he could have whatever you want to put on them. And her, maybe. Is her hand on the glass? Or she just
Yeah,
sort of,
in that direction, kind of reaching out for it.
so she's kind of reaching. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get her some at some point. Again, this is going to become a stylization thing. Is that a hoodie?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd get this big idea. You have those little pull things. Oops. They're very foldy, so I'd probably get a fold here. I might do something a little more with her hair because that's always fun. Maybe this comes back like you got it with her ear. Oops. I think you're fleshing out the face pretty good. Put the upper lip in shadow and just have a shadow under that bottom one. Keep the nose like you did, just very simple. Young people, you got to be careful because young people, and you're doing it, it's fine. You know, the features are soft, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're keeping them soft, it's fine. Like not putting too much information on the nose is good. You know, so on and so forth. And then maybe I could get a loose hair here or something.
Yeah, I found that I was kind of struggling with making the faces look more youthful rather than like
It's mostly
older.
like, you know, there's not a lot of angularity usually. A lot of times, like with boys, like she looks a little older. Like maybe how old is she, do you think?
She's looking like she's double digits, but I was trying to go for like 5.
Okay, just play around. I mean, I don't mind it actually because she still feels young.
Mm-hmm.
Might put that other finger there somehow, maybe. And then I like, oops, hang on. I like, damn it. You know, this here, and maybe like this is on a different plane than all this back here. So all this back here could go a little bit monochromatic and much less in value.
Mm-hmm.
So now you sort of got a space, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And what's down here? I don't know. Something. And if you want to get her younger, that's fine too. But I think the drawing is a pretty good start. And she still feels young. She feels like she could be 11,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't give you any parameters for this, so I really don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think, okay, you could do this one.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No, I think
And then make sure, you know, if you're doing it from this perspective, I'm going to see a little bit of the top there.
Mm.
So if you ever notice when you're looking at the top of an aquarium, usually it's like shimmery on top,
Mhm.
the surface. Like you just simplify that, okay?
Okay.
Like don't look at stuff and go, oh, I'm going to draw every reflection. You simplify it, okay?
Mm.
Or maybe it's just a light source and then you're done. Okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
So start refining. Where's Lance? Where are you?
I'm here.
I need more information.
I was trying to work on lighting and stuff.
Don't worry about lighting yet. Worry about
Okay.
Okay, you're putting the cart
Okay.
before the horse. You got to get drawing and scenario and scene down. Yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So give me more. I think I said this. I'm probably gonna try and do a midweek meeting this week
Okay.
because we lost a day. Okay, where's Robert?
Right here.
She
Yeah.
I think I'd make her more prominent.
Yeah.
She's sort of getting lost in the woods.
Yeah. I was also like just now thought like maybe I should add some stuff in the foreground so it doesn't look like she's walking next to a forest.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good point. You could probably do that. Yeah, that's a really good point. So
Maybe, like add a tree, like
like you could put something here in the foreground, right?
yeah.
That's a really good point. And maybe something here or something.
Yeah.
You know, if there's any kind of light source, I know it's night, but it's night, right?
Yeah.
But you know, you could have a little bit of a moon back here
Okay.
through the trees, and it's just an idea. Like maybe the moon's back here somewhere, really, you know, light. But then I have an excuse to go and have all these shadows sort of radiate out across the foreground, right? And it's a tricky thing because you got the trees lighter, so it's a little bit of a tricky thing, but you might be able to make it work. Might even be that there's just a core down the center of these trees and they're catching a little bit of edge light from the moon. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then you can get a little more, that's up to you though. But the foreground thing, you're totally right on. And then get this face worked out, this whole thing worked out more. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like that foot needs to, you know, this posture needs to feel a little more natural. Build the skirt, by the way, when you're building the skirt or whatever, you know, kind of think of it as like that. Let's say you're going to get some pulls from there. If there's something binding it up like a belt, and then down here, then I can kind of start to break this shape up a little bit. And then I think you put some of it in there, you know, a little bit of the back of the leg, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then up here, there's no information on the interior. So I'd start to, because I think the composition's fine. Well, let's look at this, by the way. Hang on. This is another good one for reference. Okay, see how that moon's back there somewhere?
Oh yeah.
And then he's got a sort of secondary light source. It feels like it's up here to the upper left. Since it's a park, you can kind of get away with that. And what's cool about it is he's by doing that, he's still getting that little bit of brownish thing on there, even though it's a night shot. And everything kind of cools out as it goes behind. So something like, and you can see these big purpley shadows. It just gives it a lot of drama, right?
Yeah.
So think like that.
Okay.
Blow the thing up and start to refine, right? Don't get all fussy. Just start to go, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, and then build into it.
Okay.
It's always, and to me, it's always that. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Where's Sydney at?
Hello. I'm
Wallaby
here.
Way.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're sort of trying to figure out like individual elements, correct?
Yeah, so I was figuring out which way she should be seated, if her back should be more towards the middle or if her back should be more towards the edge of the page. So I went with edge of the page because that one didn't really feel right, but this one,
Is that here?
yeah. I like that face and the body a lot better than the first one.
Now you got to, I try and get it into a more, okay, so this is the first time she's seeing this and she's kind of like, what, right?
Yeah.
By the way, here's another one, hang on, that I love, that's similar to this. Yeah, I love this one. Where the hell did it go? Oh, there it is. Right?
Yeah.
Watercolor, by the way, same technique, by the way, same technique we're doing. And I love the extra stuff, like the little audience, but you just see their eyes. The gesture is great, you know, and then obviously this thing back here, and then the way he vignetted it, and then look how he, because it's on white, he just vignetted a little white into wet wash and left that white moon in it, right?
Yeah.
Really smart design. Okay. And then this right here is just a light wash, not wet into wet, so on and so forth, right? Very worked out, obviously. He's a great draftsman. Anyway, nice staging, pose, all that. Clever ideas. That's why he gets paid a ton of money for that stuff. Okay, so we got to get, what was she doing prior to this happening?
So refined sketch 4, the next one, she's just reading a book and she just happens to look up.
Okay,
and,
that's
like,
good.
see a frog proposing to her.
Okay, so we got to get the pose where I'm reading that, which is probably going to be, it's probably going to be, I'm just going to see if I can figure it out a little bit here. I don't care about the clothing. And she could even have her face even more down. Hang on, I'm on the wrong layer. If she was reading, could it be that her face is down a little bit? And these are things I just try. And she's sort of looking up. And then if I'm sitting here reading on a bench, probably going to be leaning back a little. So a lot of times I'll work these things out just with these really simple shapes. So she's leaning. Pull fold there, gather there. And then what era is this? It looks Victorian to me.
I was basing it on Edwardian.
Okay. But still a very formal period, correct?
Yes.
So a little bit of the posture can be a little bit, but I'd have her looking up at him. Like maybe she just, and it's one option, but maybe she's, reading and then he shows up and she just looks up at him. It's before she completely engages with it. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's just one idea. Obviously, there could be a lot of them. I'd get this all worked out. first thing you got to do, and you're doing it, you just got to work out the pose first. And then is this like a gazebo?
Yeah, I was picturing it as an overgrown gazebo,
And
and
then that means there's going to be, which is really
ivy.
fun.
Yeah, and there's ivy on the like panels and stuff.
So I can get some fun. And then back here, what I would do, I think we talked about this. Back here, you know, I'd have just washes of foliage and stuff like that, real light, right?
Yeah.
Then you got this whole interior space going out into that bright space, right? So now you
Mhm.
can really play with it. And then, you know, he's here. I think it's this kind of pose, sort of like the one we just looked at, really, a little bit, you know. Yeah. And I got him in front of that, which probably isn't a good idea. I probably need him. I might have to put the post somewhere else and get him a clean silhouette. Like I think he needs a clean silhouette.
Okay.
And if you have like a light value, washy, foliagey kind of thing, it'll silhouette him because he'll be darker, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And then once I finally get that, then I can start to go, oh, maybe they've got sleeves and a big formal collar, and I'm probably going to Victorian because I don't know much about Edwardian. Same thing here, and I can start to decorate the cake a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is she reading? You know, that can be part of the sight gag too, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I would give her. Did they do those crazy elaborate hairdos then?
Yes.
Soften that nose up. It's way too dude. You know, and then I think she should almost be like she's not even reading it yet. Like she's just like, what the hell? Right?
Yeah.
It's before she takes it, at least to me anyway. It's before she completely takes it in. Before you go like, holy crap, that's a frog, you know? And then just figure out these things.
Yeah.
You know, and this might be a nice little vignette. You might just have it do like we just looked at with that frog thing where the edges just vignette off.
Okay.
Sometimes I think that's better than going wall to wall once in a while, right? And it's the same thing as like what I was talking about with the washes, like when do I use what wash to do what thing? It's the same thing with your compositions. They always kind of tell you, like you're like, this should be a little vignette-y thing. Or maybe it's 3 vignettes on a page, or, you know, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the idea works pretty good. And this stuff back here, I think I've showed you guys this one before, but I like this sort of simplicity. Yeah. Give me that.
I was originally looking at the early the draftsman did a video of going through his sketchbook. He was famous for doing a lot of animal illustrations.
Oh, Heinrich Clay.
Yeah, I was using like his frogs as reference.
There's Heinrich Clay. There's T.S. Sullivan, I think, also was known for that. I think that's who it is. You go back, and then you can go back to the person who did not sure if it's the writer or the illustrator, or whatever, A. Milne or whatever, who did Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
And
also,
then just for like observational stuff, like at circuses and stuff, Wilhelm Busch is an amazing artist.
And any concept art for Mr. Toad too.
Who did?
Concept art for Mr. Toad.
Who did?
I don't know who did it. I'm just saying, like.
Oh, you're looking at the concept. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Heinrich Clay, they completely took his a lot of his drawings for Fantasia.
Yeah.
And everybody always goes, "Hey, I ripped them off." It's like, oh, come on, man. The stuff's out in the world. Because I'm assuming he was dead by then. Yeah, Clay is a monster draftsman, man. But you know, what's fun to me about it, and are you actually looking at frogs?
I was only looking at Henrik Clay. I was
See,
only looking at.
That's my problem that I yell at everybody about all the time. It's like, okay, the first thing you should go to is the headwaters. The headwaters is an actual frog. Okay.
Yeah.
And just draw them, you know, and just draw them and start going, what can I push here? What can I play with? Once you get comfortable drawing them with the shape language, then you can start to play with shape or playing with the shapes, right? Which is obviously what he's doing here. What bothers me is when they go boom right to concept art. It's like nobody is going to pay you to go copy somebody else's work unless you want to be a character artist at Disney or whatever. And by the way, that's not easy. Okay. Because guys like me are coming to you and go, I want Mickey doing this. I want him jumping out of a plane. I want him blah, blah, blah. I want him to, and you got to know all that squash and stretch and drawing on model. And I absolutely hate it. I cannot stand drawing stuff on model because it's just not my thing. So you've got to go to the headwaters every time you do research. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
First, because what happens then is you go, okay, now you just get, okay. And if you give me anybody, okay, DeSev, Clay, anybody, right? Once you go to their design language or whatever, you're giving me a second, third, 100th, 5,000th rate version of that because that's their thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You got to develop your own thing. Then other people want to copy your thing. Okay. Because then you own it. And that's why people hire you because you go, you're bringing something really valuable to the table. Like DeSev, Goodrich, Nico Marley, all those people are very unique stylists. Okay. And they come onto these things and they don't really draw on model. They actually draw, they bring their style into it. And yeah, they know, they're looking at the script and all that stuff and they know where they got to go, but they're bringing those people in to sprinkle their magic on that project. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's where the money is, by the way. You always want to be on the concept side. That's where the money is. You want to be calling the shots. That's where the money is. You want to be art directing. That's where the money is. Creative direction, all that stuff, being in charge of the situation or in development, visual development, whatever it is. That's where the money is. Okay. I mean, personally, I did storyboards once or twice. I didn't do it that much. And part of the reasons the first time I did, I go, screw this, man. I don't like these people telling me what to do. And, you know, they were letting me do the shots and all that stuff, but it wasn't enough. You know what I mean? I didn't like somebody coming to me and go, here, do this, screw you. I want to be involved in the creative process. I don't want to be a wrist. And it feels too much like being a wrist. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Or character artists over Disney. They're not character designers. They're character artists. And that's a different thing than a character designer. They're just there to draw those characters on model however I want them. Okay. Or whatever department wants them. Okay. The animation attraction over California Adventure, all those drawings on the front of the whatever you call it, that attraction, all those rough animation drawings, I designed all that. And then I go, hey, you animator, put them all on model and stuff. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? And I'm getting paid way more money than he is. Okay. Because I'm just bringing him in to do that stuff. That's not where I want to be. Now, if you like doing that, I think it's totally cool. Like I knew people at, you know, different places, but especially Disney, because they got a lot of character artists. And those people just love doing that. They love drawing those characters, you know, and they get really good at it. And what's weird is some of them, I look at their sketchbooks, I go, God, their sketches aren't that good, but they're really good at doing that because that's sort of what they focused on. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it's a unique skill set. Like everybody always goes, oh, those characters are designed to be drawn easily. They're not easy to draw, like not on model and not starting to pose them in ways that you don't have any reference for. It's not easy. It's something that you actually need to, I was thinking about this yesterday. It's not a bad thing to start learning how to draw on model. Okay. Because you don't know when that's going to happen when you need, actually, if you want to go to entertainment, you're going to basically be having to draw in one way or another on model. Now, Disney, you're going to go, or wherever, anything's animation or whatever, you're going to go and they're going to have model sheets and and it has a basic construction breakdown of the whole character. And then it has little notes in there where like, and one I always remember is a bell. Okay. And there's little notes in there. We go, here's how Belle's hair is. It's this mass and this mass and this mass. Then they go, when Belle's a little bit disheveled, it's 3 strands come down. Like it was very specific. Okay. And that's why obviously you can look at an animated movie and it looks like this, it looks like one person animated it. Okay. when there's 8 people animating or whatever, right? But it's not a bad skill to have in your back pocket. And yeah, I think they usually put the character artist through training because it's very specific. And I had a guy who worked for me, and he'd been in the business forever. Okay, I might have said this. I don't think I did though. And when we were going to get laid off, like I told the people who worked for me, I go, we're going to get laid off. And I go, this contract thing has gone completely south. I'm trying to save jobs, but I just don't think they care because they didn't. And anyway, so I went by his desk, and I love the way he drew. I went by his desk, and he had a stack of 11 by 17 paper, and I started looking through it, and it was just endless drawings of the basic construction of like Mickey Mouse, the basic construction of like certain characters, right? Just all over and over and over again, because we weren't doing any work. We were dead in the water. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, I have to go out and get a job again. And he had to get that skill set reignited again. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that guy had been doing it for at least 20 years. You know what I mean? But he's like, I haven't been doing this for here because I haven't been doing other things. And sometimes I have him do a character thing. But, you know, it's a very specific skill set. And then I had another person work for me who was just a monster. And she could draw her own way really, really beautifully. Like she was a great designer, great drafts person. But she could, boom, knock stuff on model and just turn that thing on model like quick as hell. Really wide skill set. You know what I mean? And I think that's a really good skill set to have. Okay. Because then you're doing, like me and Frank were talking about this, when he was at Nickelodeon, his time would be up on some project, and then they go, we need, you know, he'd hear that they need this or that. And he goes, I can do that. And he just kept shifting over. You know what I mean? And where most people, they go, oh, you're a, whatever you do, okay, you're part of this, job's over, you're out. And they don't do a lot of stuff. They're specialists. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with being a specialist that you want to do. But I'd make sure it's not something so specialized that the phone's going to ring once a year for a job. Does that make sense? I mean, personally to me, I like just being a broad-based designer, and I like doing all kinds of stuff. Okay. Okay. So you know what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really get her head worked or her face worked out, like how you want to do the eyes. By the way, you guys, it's not a bad idea to go, because here's the thing with things like eyes, when you're talking about stylization, okay? You can run through, just to get you kick-started or to get your brain around it. If you go and look at stylized eyes, you're probably going to run out of variations kind of at around 10 or 20. Does that make sense? So it's not a bad idea to just go look at different variations, because you're going to, that's a thing where you're just taking a component out and then kind of doing your take on it or whatever, you know, because there's just all these different ways, you know, you can come in here and do this kind of thing, you know, this kind of thing. A little more realistic. This kind of thing. Maybe some eyebrow lashes, you know, and I can just keep doing this on and on and on and get some different stylizations on eyes. Okay. Because you don't always want to just go in and do what I just did there. I'm doing that because it's a rough sketch. Does that make sense? And sometimes that is the right solution, but I don't think it would be for this. But, and also if I was doing this, I'd really be like, I'd be really into drawing all this clothing. I think that's fun. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And maybe I'd have to look at Edwardian stuff, which is probably really fun. It's probably a lot of shapes to chew on there, which is really fun. Hang on. I don't know what all that is. I mean, fashion is just fun in general. And then I'd probably have to do something with the eyes where if I was doing this pose where I have some structure on the eye to lift the pupils up in, so it really looks like they're looking up like that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Because if I just do them floating like that, it might not get the idea across as much. I don't know if maybe if I flatten them off. Yeah, it's a little better. But anyway, I put some kind of structure around it. That's still not working right. And then, you know, you got your little vignette. Oh, I was going to show you this one thing, and then I'll stop harping on this. Look how washy and loose that background is. You guys see that? So when you look at it here, that's a very finished illustration, correct? But look in the background. Look at the buildings. It's a wash. And in these washes, he didn't even structure the windows, right? He just went and went with a brush, right? Then back here, shifts the tone a little here. That's probably wet into wet stuff. This was probably mostly wet into wet, and then he went back over it. If you look at the alligator, look how abstract that is. Right? Does that make sense? Casey? Why you look so studious?
That's just how I look.
All right, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So what is he doing here? And this is something that I'm trying, okay, another thing I'm trying to do here, and I probably said this too, is I'm trying to get your thinking ahead of the curve that we might even not be able to achieve in here, okay? I'm trying to plant seeds so down the path you're going to go, and you'll know what I was talking about because your skill set will catch up to it. One of the things I'm talking about here, which I love, is he's piling a lot of shapes together, okay? And that's what's building it into such an interesting, complex looking image, okay? It's building shapes. And part of your toolbox for that is you can pop a little darker value in there, and then you start to move into the skill set of, now I'm popping some shapes in there that are temperature or reflected light. And after a while, all of a sudden you'll have a lot of shapes in there that you didn't really even think about. And all of a sudden you arrive at something like this, okay? If you notice, he's got these little purple hits in here, right? Look at that on the nose. Look at back here. Okay, then this warm ochre color. Then a completely different color, this orange popping out of there. Mostly it's cool up here, a little green. Why is there a little green? Because he put that up there, right? And this is what you want to think about when you start thinking about your lighting and all that. And I mentioned this before on the demo I did. When you put this up here, this is light back here. These are all translucent. So this big wash of leaves is actually a big color gel, like in front of a light. Okay, so now I've got light behind it, it's passing through all the translucency of the leaves, and I can make an excuse that light now is falling on the alligator up here, where it starts to get these little subtle greenish things. Does that make sense? Because they're pretty reflective. An alligator's pretty reflective. And then even though the underside of these things I think is kind of warm, this is also following a thing where I've got a lot of warm light hitting down here and bouncing back up into the bottom, right? Does that make sense? That's how I'm always thinking. I'm thinking about lighting, like stage lighting. That's how I'm thinking of it, you know? Oh, I need a green colored gel over here. So when the character walks on stage, they're in this green stage environment and it feels like they walk into the, the lighting makes sense, okay? And it's heightened, okay? Like on stage, it's going to be heightened, right? And we're kind of doing the same thing. And then all the simplicity in here. Look at the background. There's no detail back there at all. It's all washes, okay? And the same concept. Big wash starts knocking in some of these like other shapes to break up the shapes. Does that make sense? Yeah? Oh, I got a cap. Let me screen grab the room again. Okay, Sydney, does that all make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we know what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, there's different ways you could stage it. There's a million ways. You could do it like you had it where she's kind of facing the other way and then looks over. That would work too, But make sure you're posing them out. Sit down with the book and go, how would I be sitting, right? When I do these open discussion things, I usually open them up to all my classes and just go, I'm going to talk about whatever you want. It doesn't even have to be anything in my class or whatever. But I will put that announcement up and say I'm doing an open discussion on Tuesday at this time. And it just means I'm there if you want to show up, and you don't have to respond. You don't have to show up. I'm not going to come back in here and go, nobody's in there. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to do that. Okay. I think that actually makes it useless. I want it just to be a place where it's like, always, I'm being there if I need to ask questions, I'll jump in. Now, here's the other thing though. If I go in and nobody's there, I'll wait around about 10 minutes and then I'll split. Does that make sense? I'm not going to wait around for an hour or whatever. So I'd be prompt about it. And that way it gives us a little touch point here, because every term that we start, for some reason, there's some damn holiday like right at the beginning of the term, which I actually find annoying. And it sort of, especially in this class, we only meet once a week, and I don't. So anyway, I'm doing this because we only meet once a week, and I feel like we might need another day. Okay, where I can look, because this drawing thing is really important. Like nailing down this drawing thing is really important. Okay, and the design and all that stuff. Again, you cannot paint a crappy drawing. It just makes no sense. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I know I'm going step by step on this stuff. I'm going to beat you really hard on this one particular project, and then it'll get easier. It'll get easier in the front end of it. Okay. But then you're going to be learning another medium, because we're going to go from this to acrylic. Acrylic's tricky. Okay. Some people I hated it when I first learned acrylic, hated it. Now I love it. But, so hopefully what I'm trying to do with the acrylic thing is I'm trying to hopefully show you how to use it correctly so you don't hate it. Okay. Because I think that's the whole process with acrylic. It's just, it does what it does. And if you don't sort of just let it do what it does, it'll just fight you like crazy. Okay. There's also better acrylics now than there were back then. The golden opens are great. They stay workable longer, so on and so forth. The technology has just gotten better. And then we'll go into gouache. Okay. Gouache will do a character thing. Acrylic will just do a cityscape, so on and so forth. Right. What else are they going to say? But everybody's clear on what we just talked about, right? So what we are doing now is trying to get our drawings refined. Okay. And I also want you to understand that, like, that doesn't mean that everything's super tight. Okay. It can be loose and all that kind of stuff, but you just want to sort of define, where's my line weights? Where's my, lighting? Where's my line weight in relation to the lighting? You want it to, if it's a loose drawing, you want it to still feel finished. Does that make sense? Like, I don't like, I'm not a big fan of big tight stuff. Some people do it beautifully. I'm not saying they don't, but I think it still needs to start with a really loose drawing, even if you're going to go to tight. Okay. I should have more drawings, by the way. And I'm going to put an assignment up from now on. I'm just going to put an assignment up for everything, because then if people aren't doing it, it's good. It affects your grade. I'm going to put an assignment up for everything. So this week coming up, I'm going to want refined drawings. If you don't do it, it's a 0. Okay. And especially in this case, because you guys had a week, you know what I mean? So to me, it's just weird. It's like, why would you not do your work? I don't get it. But if you don't do the mileage in this kind of stuff, forget it. Okay. If you don't go into this and fail, forget it. Okay. You're going to learn a ton of stuff from failing. I know it's a cliche, but man, it's true. If you are not failing, you're not trying. Does that make sense? This process is not easy. None of these things are easy. Okay. Digital's pretty easy in a way, in a weird way. Like if you go, once you know how to do this stuff and you're painting and stuff, when you go to digital, man, you'll smoke that stuff. You know what I mean? Because you'll actually have painting knowledge. You actually have knowledge behind what you're doing. And you'll go, Jesus, I can layer any kind of brush stroke over any kind of brush stroke. I can go watercolor over oil, over acrylic, over gouache, I'm painting with light. So I don't have the problem of trying to create light. I'm painting with light. You know what I mean? I can use this thing to create a texture behind it. I can do, it's just so many things. And then, but then you get into that area of people like Craig Mullins and Greg Rutowski or whatever it is. And a few other ones that are really painterly in their digital work. It's because they're really good painters, right? There's a reason why everybody worships at the altar of Craig Mullins, right? I mean, you go over to the Disney animation place, there was a bunch of his stuff because they had all this artwork in the hallways. I remember there being a lot of his stuff over there last time I was over there. You know what I mean? And then when you mention that, I go, that's a Craig Mullins, right? The guy goes, whoever I was hanging out with, 2 or 3 of them, they go, yeah, it's Craig Mullins. Like, oh my God, he's unattainable. You know what I mean? Like everybody thinks he's amazing, right? And it's because he's a good painter. And then he brought it into the digital environment, and he's a monster digital painter. You know what I mean? Monster everything. But anyway, so that's kind of the point. Okay. Also, I want you guys to have flexibility. If you're, going to go out and have a career, have some flexibility. You know what I mean? You might be working at Disney on something, and then you find out that their print label is doing a storybook on whatever, and you're like, hey man, I can do that. You know what I mean? Because it's getting harder and harder, and I've seen it myself. It's getting harder and harder to find people with real skills. I mean, there's a lot of monster talented people out there, but when you're doing a job search, looking for people, you get a lot of people who just don't have really those skills anymore. Does that make sense?
I have a question about that actually. Just kind of touching on the specific. Is it because they lack foundational skills, or is it because they just don't have like a wide breadth of experience doing different projects?
It's foundational skills.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the things that I looked at right away was drawing. It was actually sketching. I'm like, okay, so you're showing me some fancy digital painting that I'm also looking at and going, I don't really think you know how to paint. Like I can tell. It's mushy, it's amateurish on some level. Like it's good enough where a lot of people don't know any better go, wow, but I'm looking at it going, you don't really know how to paint. You know what I mean? That's a problem to me. And I was probably way more hard ass about it than a lot of people, because I would get candidates all the time that people go, hey, check this out. And I look at it and I go, are you kidding me? Like, you think I'm going to hire this person? I mean, it got to the point where I went to, I remember this distinctly at Disney stores. I went to the HR department because they would filter candidates for me and they'd send me whatever, portfolios or whatever. And I finally went over to HR. I brought my portfolio in. I go, I want to see work at this level or above, or I don't want to see it. Okay. I go, you guys are sending me a bunch of amateurs and it wastes my time and it's irritating because I hate hiring anyway. I hate that process. And a lot of times it's getting filtered through an HR department and they don't know anything about creative. They don't know what a good drawing looks like. And then I'd look at stuff and I'd go, look at this guy's perspective. The ellipses are out of perspective, which is a big red flag. I go, where's the process? All I'm seeing is this finished, concept-y stuff, which also kind of tells me they might be a fanboy, which I do not want to hire. And then I'm going, where's the process? Like, this gives me no comfort as a hiring or as a potential employer that you can work for every painting or whatever you do, rendering, you're going to do a billion sketches to get there, to work out the design, to talk to me, for me to talk to the people I got to talk to the team, to get all these ideas worked out. You're just sketching and sketching and sketching. So you've got to have this very quick, very clear sketching style, right? Which is usually just Viscom or whatever. And then you get people who you can, and then when I don't see process in there, like give me a page of like a bunch of sketches, like really beautiful sketches, just 5-minute sketches. Show me that process, then show me how you went in here and refined it a little bit. And then I turn the page and I get the finished product. Maybe it's literally a product shot. Maybe it's the digital painting, whatever it is. But now you're showing me how you work. And that's giving me a comfort level that I'm not hiring a drawer. Okay. Because I've done that. I think I told you guys that. Hired somebody. I need all this stuff. I'll be back at 2. And I come back and he's on the second drawing going, 2 drawings. I go, are you out of your mind? You should have 5 pages of drawings. Okay. Fired, had to get rid of them. Okay. I don't like firing people, but I had to. Okay. And I had a discussion with them. I go, I cannot pay you to sit here all day and do 2 ideas. You know what I mean? I go, you don't have, and I go, it's my fault. I should have seen it. Or maybe I inherited them. I don't remember. But I go, I can't pay you to do this. How much did I pay you today to produce basically nothing? I go, your first drawing is just a variation on my idea. And then the second drawing is just a variation on that idea. And it's not even done. You know what I mean? And then I have to go into my office for 15 minutes and scramble a bunch of drawings together for a meeting that I don't want to look like an idiot in. You know what I mean? So it's that skill set. It's your bread and butter. It's what you get hired for. Okay. Ideas, potentially, depending on where you're at in the food chain, or conceptual ideas and execution. Okay. And the other thing, when you go into a job, whatever job it is, start taking stock of everything in that job. Start going to that job and go, what works here? What doesn't work here? Where does that paperwork go? How does this stuff get manufactured? How do we spec out the budget? How do we work within a budget? What's the business side of this stuff? What do all the marketing people do? What do the trend department do? What do they do? What do they do? And then you can move up, because you're getting your head out of just being an artist and going, that's great. But it's like, at some point I probably want to move up. You know what I mean? And there's something really fun, by the way, of moving up. And I didn't realize this at first, where you're kind of conducting the orchestra. And when you have really good people, that's actually really fun. You know what I mean? Because they're taking your ideas and they're making them better. And there's like a back and forth, and it's really a fun process. If you're in a group of people that are really good, and then when they start delivering on it, you're like, it just feels really good when people start delivering on things. Like you go, I need that Thursday, and they show up on, it's there on Thursday, not an excuse. Because you make excuses, forget it. That nobody's going to keep you on. Especially the stuff I hear with students. Oh, my hand hurts. It's like, really? Then you're not going to have a career in this. If your hand hurts when you draw, you're not going to have a career in this. Okay. I don't know what that is. I'm old and my hands don't hurt. I mean, they hurt, but I can draw fine. Anyways, that answer that? Skills and ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you can't be missing deadlines. Yeah.
100%.
That makes me crazy, especially when people go, oh, doing this stuff in another class. It's like, you know what? My class is the only class that matters. Yeah. And by the way, every other teacher probably tell you the same thing. Okay. And they're right to a certain extent. Okay. Because they're like, no, I expect full presence here. I don't care what Mike's doing in his class. You know what I mean? They're going to tell you the same thing. Right. And you have to, and then, by the way, this is important. You have to learn how to manage your time. Okay. Because in the real world, if you miss deadlines, man, forget it. You know what I mean? And nobody wants to hear excuses. Just like when that guy did the crappy sketches and I had to go in and, do my own sketches in a half an hour or whatever it was. I didn't go in there and make excuses for that. I didn't go, oh, I got this guy on my team, man, and throw this guy under the bus. I mean, I had to get rid of him. But I didn't go in there and go, make excuses. I just go, I had to go in and suck it up and go, I don't really think this is the greatest presentation in the world. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to make excuses for it because nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear that. You know what I mean? It's on you. And if it's your team, whatever that team's doing, it's on you. And when they're doing monster great work, that's also, then it's on them. You know what I mean? Then you go, hey man, it's these people. They're amazing. I got an amazing team. Because you get your credit for being a team leader. You know what I mean? People make the mistake as art directors, which is why art directors have bad reputations, of wanting to take all the credit for their team. You know what I mean? That's why they have a bad reputation. That's why a lot of people hate art directors. And you shouldn't do that. You should highlight your team. You're getting plenty of credit for being the guy who's running that team or the woman who's running that team. You know what I mean? Don't go around taking, because now as soon as you do that, and it doesn't have to be you're running the team, you could be on the team. If you start taking credit for other people's work and stuff like that, you will get alienated fast, okay? Because to me, that's a cardinal sin. Don't steal ideas and then tell me they're yours. That is irritating, you know what I mean? And especially don't steal my ideas and then tell me they're yours, which I've had a lot of people do. Like stand there a week later and tell me my exact idea that I pitched the week before and act like it's their idea. And then I go get the sketch and I go, you mean that idea that I pitched last week? You know what I mean? And I call them on it because it's like, I don't want you doing that because that's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. That means that you didn't do anything this week. You just copied my idea. And now you're trying to present it as your idea. You know what I mean? And by the way, it's hard to come up with ideas sometimes. I mean, sometimes they just flow, but and what we want to do in here, what I'm trying to get you guys to do is I can't make you creative, but I can help you put a process and a methodology around your creativity. Does that make sense? And you need to have that. It's not, and I probably said this before, but it's not sitting here and waiting for lightning to strike or any of that crap that you see in movies. I'm in a cafe with my beret on and pontificating and smoking and, oh, I got this idea. And I go back to my place at 1 o'clock in the morning, half drunk. And I do, that's BS. You put a process around it. Okay. And part of that process is what I said earlier, go to the headwaters, start designing or start getting your information from the headwaters, the real thing, then move into stylization when you feel comfortable with the shape language, so on and so forth. If you're going to go look at anybody else's work, I'd probably look at stuff that's not apples to what I'm doing because it can influence your work too much. I do like to look at really great work to get myself fired up and go, ooh, I love that. I want to do something that good, or I want to do something better than that. You know, I get that totally. Or I might go look at something I look at once in a while is the moose designs in Brother Bear, I think it is. That is a really complex design, and they really pushed it. And that's a really hard animal to animate because it's got a snout this long and the mouth's back here. You know what I mean? And how they just push that design on it so hard. It's just something that it clicks a certain thing in my brain before I start drawing. Does that make sense? But I'm not drawing moose. You know what I mean? I'm just going, yeah, that complexity of that design is really cool. Or the way they simplify the complexity of that design. I don't know how they animated that thing, by the way. That looks like a nightmare to animate that character, both those characters. And then they had two of them, right? Okay. So no more questions, right? Okay, so what I want to try and do this week, I just said it, but I'm going to try and get a little more clear video on what we talked about last week or last time about basic washes and things like that, like starting to turn them into other things, right? And a lot of these, what I'm going to do with these short ones like this will probably be an hour or something. I'm just riffing. I'm not trying to make a great painting. I'm trying to just throw a lot of, just like the video I'm going to send you guys on this landscape stuff. Actually, there's two I'll send you. One is the basic discussion when I start talking about this in class. I'm actually doing it tomorrow, which is just basic ideas about that kind of idea. And that's one of those drawings where I'm just throwing stuff down, not trying to make a great drawing. And then there's another one that's on location, if you guys want me to put up, that I did on location up here in the mountains, sort of applying that idea into a real environment. Does that make sense? So it might help you a little bit just to sort of get your head around foliage. Foliage was a big thing to me. It probably is to everybody. And I don't know if I ever said this, but I had a class, kind of like my Saturday class with Norm, who I told you was totally intimidating. He wasn't intimidating, like he was mean. He was just really good. But and he said, we're going to Descanso Gardens next week. Okay. Because we always went on these field trips. And I remember panicking and going, Descanso Gardens is nothing but billions of leaves and trees. Like, how in the hell do you draw that? You know what I mean? It's like, it's basically texture. Okay. So that's the reason I did the one on location. And I had my board at a weird angle, so I couldn't really get on the board that hard. So I had to kind of approach it a little more painterly because I couldn't really get on there like that. I had my board, you'll see it in the video. So I'll just throw that in there too. I think it might help. And those are just loose, sketchy things, but I think it'll help you sort of organize. And then once you look at that on this week, when we meet or this following week, if you have questions around that, I want to hear them. Okay. Like if you have questions around stylization or how can I bring this information into my final drawing and all that kind of stuff, or if you just have technique questions or anything like that. Does that make sense? Okay. And I expect to see drawings from everybody. Does that make sense? And I'm probably going to do, I think I'm going to do it on Tuesday. I'm going to try and do it on Tuesday, do another thing. And again, you don't have to show up. If you want to, you can. Okay. And I'll put a link to it just like I always do. I'll put the folder up. I'll put this video up. And I think that's it, right? Because I don't have enough stuff to go over. Wait, let me see what's in chat.
So next week we need to have the refined sketches.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is Friday, because I parse out information where I don't want to start piling things on when you're in something else and feel like, I don't mind if you guys, if I show you things, hey, you can take a look at this and start getting your head around that. I think that's fine, but I don't want to keep piling things on at the same time. I want to really get through this drawing part, because once we get through that, then we can really start. So what I'm going to probably do on Friday is I'm going to go over color comps, value comps. And then once we do those two things, we can start painting. Okay. But what you really need to do is get your drawing as close to finish as you can. Okay. And that's why I don't like it when people miss a step, because then I get the drawing next week and it's like, this isn't even close. You know what I mean? It's not even close. You missed a whole week. You actually missed 2 weeks. And now you got to catch up. And I always equate that to why I can't do math. Okay. I lost steps and then I never recovered. I just had no idea what was going on at that point. That was a horrible feeling, by the way. Nothing wrong, nothing worse than being in class where you've lost the thread. You don't know what you're doing in there. And I try to keep that from happening, which is why we have so many conversations and all that kind of stuff, because I want to make sure I'm answering questions as we're rolling along. Okay. And I'm trying to roll out this information in a coherent, digestible way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
So we
everything,
don't
go ahead.
so we don't need to do color comps this week, or
No.
Okay.
I'll do that. I might even do, I'm trying to organize how I'm going to, I can probably just do that in class. That's not that big a deal. I'll do the value and the color comps just in class. It's fine. And I got to get these other couple of things done, and then we can, but if we can get past that, and the color comping, by the way, color comping and value, the way I'm going to show you how to do it, it literally, it takes, I mean, probably 15 minutes to do, you know, but you're going to want to do multiples and figure out your color scheme. Okay. And with this project, I don't like, really with most of these things we're doing, I don't really like when you do your color comps like digitally. I don't care if you start your drawings digitally or you do your value comps digitally. I don't care about that because it's black and white. I don't like people doing their color comps digitally because in a digital environment, you're picking a color and modifying it. So you have no idea how that color is created. No idea. Okay. When you're working apples to apples, when you're doing your color comps with watercolor, A, that's the medium you're going to use. And B, you have to mix those colors. So you start to know the formulaic part of the equation. So when you go to paint it, you've basically done a warm up on it. You know what I mean? Like a simplified warm up on it. So you kind of know. And then those little color comps, you can really push things because there's, I always keep them like that big. Right. And I just I do it. And then I go, oh, it'd be really cool if I did this. And then I just keep, moving through it. And maybe by the sixth one or something, I start getting my ideas, because what I'm trying to do is push. Another thing I want to get you guys in your head is you really have to design the color, and you really have to design the lighting, and you really have to design the elements. All those things have to be designed together to get an interesting lit color shifting environment, right? If you go in and you just put big flat washes all over everything and it's like, okay, it's a gray blue, that's not interesting. Okay. You need to, it's just like that one of the alligator I just showed you. There's so much broken up color in there, but it all pulls together, right? You need to design that kind of thinking. Okay. And you need to design, just like I said, like a stage set. I've got this over here. It's going to reflect up into the bottom. This is going to do this. This is going to do that. Okay. I got my lighting scheme together where I've got this big brown animal, let's say, in this thing, but now I can light it with a little bit of color flowing into it. So it doesn't just look like a kid painted it with a crayon or something. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like sophistication in your lighting, your color, everything. Okay. Your design, all those things. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Everybody's good? Okay. If you guys need to get a hold of me, right? And I'll try and do that thing on Tuesday. If I don't do it on Tuesday, I'll try to do it on Thursday, but I'd rather do it on Tuesday because Thursday's right before our class. Okay. And sometimes, by the way, I get an email from you guys. I might not be home. That's why I'm not responding to it immediately. Or I get it late or something. I'm half asleep or something, I'm half drunk, stuff like that. Okay, guys, I'll let you go. All right. Thanks, you guys. I'll get everything up today.
Thank you, Mike.
I have one more question.
Okay.
So since mine seem to be like way off, should I try to do just next Friday? Should I just bring in I don't know.
Here's what I would do.
Or should I just pick somebody else's picture?
That's up to you.
I don't really want to do that. But
I would give it one more pass before I went to that solution.
okay. I just don't want to hold you.
What I would do is don't go. I don't know if I'd go. Well, you could. I would probably just do what I was talking about earlier, just doing the quick little thumbnail to kind of work out the problems now that we're identifying in it. And then send me the thumbnails.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't want to be behind. I don't want to hold anything up,
I don't really think you're behind yet. But I think if you send those to me during the week and we can find one and kind of land on it, then you can start refining.
Okay.
Okay. Because we have to go on Friday. We have to go over thumbnails or color and value, like I said, right? And then we're going to move into the painting probably the following week. So you're not really off yet. I don't expect everybody to nail everything. I'm pushing everybody a little harder than I normally do because I just want to give you guys enough time to paint, because you're going to need time to paint. Okay. And I also want to make sure that you have time to sort of put together a finished drawing. Okay. And that both of those things, I'm very aware that you guys are in a learning process. Okay. And I don't expect everybody to go, whoa, beautiful watercolor for, what I'm trying to do is give you all the mechanics of it. Some people just knock something out of the park. And then some people, usually it's a process, and they might come back to me 6 months later. Now they're getting really good at it because they got a process and a methodology, and they started applying the methodology and repetition. Okay. None of this stuff happens overnight. Anybody that tells you it does is full of crap. Okay, well, I know this person and they just drew amazing. I go, no. Go back and actually talk, because I've done this over and over again. Go back and actually talk to that person. Sometime in their life, they woodshedded. Okay, it might have been from they were 9 to 13. You know, they just sat in their bedroom and were obsessed with whatever they were obsessed with drawing, right? And they really compressed their learning curve really fast because they were just obsessed and doing it all the time. And maybe they were looking at books and they got a little bit of good knowledge out of it or whatever. I have a friend that he was the best one out of all of us at that time when we were young, probably like into my early 20s maybe. And I went back and I looked him up recently, and his work sucks. Okay, I mean, it looks terrible. I think he's a tattoo artist now, but he went to he was the best one in high school and all that. Then they go, you should go to City College, check that out. He went to City College, and here's where he made the mistake. He went to City College, and the teacher or whatever goes, wow, you're really good. I don't really think I have anything to teach you. Okay. All that says to me is like, oh, okay, you're not the right teacher. That's fine. He didn't do that. He took that to go, oh, I'm so good, I don't need to do this. And then now it's weird because now you look at his work, whatever it's been, 30 some odd years later, and he never pushed it up to a professional level. He never took it from a really good, fun, starting point in high school and then took that and pushed it up to professional, because that's what you have to do. You can't just be, his work now looks like a good high school student. It doesn't look professional at all to me. Does that make sense? He didn't take that path, and I know there's a few people who can learn that stuff on their own. I think that's very rare. Okay. I needed to go to school. I needed that structure. I needed that. I loved being around all these people who I could just go to and ask them questions and they'd answer. I absolutely loved that when I found that. And then also they're pushing my thinking. They were pushing everything. I would do something I thought was really good. And guess what? It wasn't good to their eye because people have been having monster careers for 20 years. And like, dude, that's not that good. Looks good to you right now because your eyes aren't that sophisticated yet. You know what I mean? And that's why they're valuable, because they are seeing it with those eyes and they're going, it's not there. And it's funny because I can go back to those pieces now and look at it and go, oh my God, it was so not there. You know what I mean? And there were certain things I was very proud of. And when I presented them, I didn't get the reaction I wanted, and now I go back and look at those pieces and go, God, they were actually nice, because this sucks. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why I thought this was good. A lot of stuff, I think everybody sees that in their work. Okay. I think that's normal. It is normal, because if you're not looking at your old work and saying it sucks, and that means you're not improving. And I don't care where you are in your career. I don't care how long you've been doing this, man. You're always looking at your stuff and going, man, that thing I did 6 months ago sucks. Why did I think that was good? That thing I did 2 weeks ago sucks. And that's because, at least for me, I always want to be better. You know what I mean? I always want to be better. Always, always, always. So I'm always in a learning process, right? Which is probably part of the reason I like teaching, because I'm immersed in this learning process, which I really like, forces me to learn a bunch of stuff. Somebody yesterday just brought something up and I know the answer. So I'm like, I got to go find it. Okay. If I don't know the answer, I'll go find it. All right. So does that answer that, Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. All right, you guys. If there's nothing else, I'll let you go. Go draw. Casey, go draw. And my class is the only one that's important.
Yes, sir. I'll tell Phil that.
Okay. Oh, he's heard it before. Yeah, he'll tell you the same thing. He'll go, screw him, man. Mine's more important.
That sounds like something he would say. Yeah.
Well, of course. He knows I'm not attacking him. He knows. Okay, guys, I'll let you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. I'll put up the video right now.
Yeah.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
See you next.